call tonight's regular meeting of the Salto School District Board of Trustees to order. Right. A recording and or broadcast of this meeting is being made at the direction of the board, which may capture images and sounds of those attending the meeting. If technical difficulties occur or persist, the meeting will continue without broadcasting. I will now call the roll. Brian?
Present.
Vladimir?
Here.
Kim?
Present.
Stella? Here. And I, Shelley Turkey, am here as well. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right. Next, agenda approval. Would any board members like to provide comment on tonight's agenda?
I would,
Please.
I would like to pull item H1. I'd like to make a motion. Well, I'm making a motion that. I'd like to make a motion to pull item H1. That second, it needs further elaboration. But that's items H2 and H3 are so tied to H1. My motion is to pull H1, H2, H3.
Okay, thank you. So you officially made the motion?
Yes.
Board members, would you like to ask Vladimir any clarifying questions before I ask for a second on the motion? You can also make a friendly amendment or substitute. Any questions for Vladimir? Then is there a second or substitute motion for a friendly amendment?
I'm even for one.
Seeing as there's no second to this motion, the motion dies and we will move on. Thank you. Oh, now I need a motion for, exactly. So I'd like to be making a motion.
I'm making the motion to approve
Okay.
the agenda.
Okay, as presented, we have a second.
I'll second.
Thank you, Stella. Motion to approve tonight's agenda as presented was made by Brian, seconded by Stella. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Yes.
Any abstentions? Great. Motion passes with 4 ayes, 1 nay, and no abstentions. Thank you. Closed session report. No action was taken in closed session tonight. Superintendent's update. Superintendent Fowler.
Thank you. Just wanted to share a few things with you. We had a really fantastic week of AI last week. And I have a few people that I want to thank: Grace Choi, Sheena Vayadanathan, and our computer science teacher team, which includes Mrs. Schroeder, Brandon Marquis, and oh my gosh, I'm blanking on her name. Say it one again. Maria, yes, I'm so sorry. Newer to our CS team, but we last week on Monday hosted 100 teachers from across the state. Stella was also there over at Santa Rita to really learn about our computer science program, TK through 8. I think it's fair to say that they were pretty blown away by our model of computer science for all, starting in TK with unplugged lessons. And then that was in partnership with the high school, the consortium around computer science, math and science group. That was kind of the group that pulled this team together. So we're hoping in June to have some other opportunities with this group around the computer science, but that was a really exciting event on Monday. Thursday, we had a minimum day for students. And so here we hosted an AI play lab. And Sheena and Grace really hosted this play lab. I think we had about 40 to 50 students show up, 6-8 students, to really learn behind the scenes of how does AI run, what does it do, what is a chatbot, like all these different things. And the kids had a lot of really great feedback and learning that they didn't come into the session with. So that was terrific. Our teachers had simple lessons on how AI works to be able to deliver within their classroom. And then you may have seen this past week that we were featured in 2 articles, one in the Washington Post and then another WRAL News around our innovative AI philosophy work group that took place, and I've told you before that that work group will come here in November to share kind of the update of their AI philosophy work. But just really excited about the innovative work we're doing around AI. And then wanted to let you know this week, tomorrow, in fact, Dr. Bosco, Mr. Drummond, and I are headed to outside of Phoenix for the Ed Leader Promise event. We went last year for the first time. We're able to share a lot about our portrait of a learner and our LASD student experience. So we hope to be able to share that again, and then also learn from others around what they're doing to ensure that our kids are prepared for a future ready world. Yeah.
That's very exciting. Thank you. All right, thank you. We're going to move on to the consent calendar. Are there any questions from the board on tonight's consent calendar?
Can I just
yeah.
add one note that there were two very minor errors, kind of typo errors that have been corrected. Just about who seconded a motion and then a completion of a sentence. So they have been corrected on the attached documents, but wanted to point that out.
Is that in the minutes?
In the minutes, yes, in the minutes. Did I not
Minutes.
say that part?
You did not say that. All right.
Yes, the minutes from the last meeting. Can't read my mind.
Thank you. Are there any requests for public comment on the consent calendar? No? Okay. We have 0 requests for public comment. Public comment is now closed. Would any board members like to provide comment on this agenda item? Then may I please have a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented?
So moved.
Thank you, Vladimir. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Stella. Motion to approve tonight's consent calendar as presented was made by Vladimir and seconded by Stella. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes unanimously. Employee request to address the board from Los Altos Teachers Association, Alex Schroeder.
Hey, guys, good evening, good to see all of you. You know, usually I come up here and I'm always asking for something or saying we need this, we need that, but today I just wanna say like, the vibes have been immaculate, and I'll tell you why, as the kids would say. It's been so cool to see multiple board members around our sites. Like, it is very clear that there's a presence. It's been really wonderful. I've seen some of you guys at multiple events, and it's just been really great because obviously if you're gonna make policy for a district, you should really see what's going on in the classrooms, in the spaces, and that's been really cool. I have every confidence that you're seeing incredible things. We had our PD day on Friday, and it's just like a cool vibe to be amongst like a bunch of educators that are excited to learn. It was a sea of green because we truly believe that when we are an association that is together and we are working together collectively, we're just like, we're being there for kids, right? We're really strong for kids. And then at the bargaining table, like the past 2 times we've been at bargaining, I've been so lucky to be able to sit in. And it's just been collaborative, incredibly honest, I just think like people are asking great questions and we're getting to places that bring all of our interests together. So the vibes are immaculate. Do you know what I gotta say? Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Alex. From the California School Employees Association? No? Okay, thank you. To provide public comment on an agenda item, speaker cards are to be submitted to the superintendent. Speaker cards will not be accepted once public comment begins. Your name will be announced when it is your turn to speak. This time is reserved for members of the public and employees to address the board on items that are not on the agenda. The board is not permitted to discuss or take action on non-agenda items, except to instruct the superintendent to review the matter further, report back to the board at a subsequent meeting, or place the matter on a future agenda. The board may make a brief comment or ask clarifying questions. Do we have anyone? Okay. Close now. Moving on to action and discussion items. On H1, if anyone else wants to provide public comment, please turn in your public comment cards. Incorporating the San Antonio site into the facilities master plan. Superintendent McGonigal.
All right, here we are. If you don't mind, I'm gonna do this from my seat so I can coordinate my notes and all of that. Thank you. So tonight, Our primary focus in this meeting, we've got lots of items in this meeting around the Measure EE bond program, around the San Antonio site and construction of a school at that site. But really wanted to start the evening by saying that this is a future LASD school that is a real asset now and into the future for this board and this superintendent, for future boards and future superintendents. I want to keep that in mind because this will give the district great flexibility over a long time. And so I think that's an important kind of grounding piece, that how can we best serve the students within our community and be flexible over time. This is an action item tonight with some staff recommendations and really an opportunity for you to begin to flesh out details around the specific use of the site in the more immediate future. So it's like patting my head and what have you. So the board and this board and staff and past boards and staffs had been tasked for quite some time with solving challenges related to facilities around Bullis Charter School. You can see here some of those challenges, and I won't read through them, but the overcrowding of our junior high school campuses, the idea of 10 schools on 9 sites. We certainly know that we're having a more programmatic impact right now, wanting to move and needing to move to a 6-8 model. We know we've heard from the community very recently, actually, about the impact of traffic and bike safety and all of those things within those communities. We know just factually, we need to provide reasonably equivalent facilities. And this has been something that the district has been tasked with for now 20+ years. And we know that as we looked in the last year or two, we have an increasing number of aging portables, specifically at the Egan campus and across all of our other sites as well. But some of those portables are 26+ years. So these are challenges. And in addition, you have been repeatedly asked by the community, this board, past boards, how are you going to solve these challenges? What's the plan? So tonight, again, you have some key milestones to begin to address solving those challenges, or at least getting closer to solving those challenges. You've also shared with us some priorities over the last few years as they relate to the programmatic needs of the district, to the San Antonio site, to the charter school facilities, and to the financial health of the district. We know now more than ever, because of our declined enrollment, that we must move to a middle school model if we want to preserve a quality program for our junior high school students. We know right now that we have 2 junior high campuses that are overcrowded. They are beyond kind of the original design capacity. There are some safety concerns that we're worried about with students and biking and traffic and all that. We certainly know through our facilities master planning process that we have more than $700 million of badly needed updates for our existing 9 sites. And that's a priority to get that work going. And of course, there's a want to have permanent facilities, reduce portable use, and ongoing rental costs that have impacted the district budget for quite some time. Like I said, we have existing portables that are more than 25 years old. The community has been clear to past and present boards have also been clear that nobody wants to close an LASD school. So it's been a priority to keep our LASD schools open. And of course, through new construction and or modernization, we really want to minimize any temporary relocation that needs to happen, because that's both costly and just difficult to live through. So these are some of the priorities that you have shared with us over time. Back in 2018, just a couple of you were still here. LASD struck a partnership with the city of Mountain View to make the purchase of the San Antonio site possible. of course, almost immediately after that, COVID happened. And the timeline for developing the site and the timeline for the transfer of development rights program and just the need for that program really changed because of COVID. And so very recently, we've been working with the city of Mountain View to extend both the TDR program to hopefully recoup some of that funding that was intended to help offset the costs of the development of the site, and to agree on updated deadlines for delivering the site because we were delayed so much by COVID. And so having this renewed partnership is a great accomplishment for both the district and the city of Mountain View, frankly. And now that that's complete, I believe we're in a great spot where the board can move forward with really determining how the new campus will fit in with our existing facilities master plan and for the plan for allocating the Measure EE bond funds. So I want to remind you of the immense amount of work and time and financial resources, both staff time and board time and community time, that has gone into trying to solve some of the challenges that we've talked about tonight. I want to remind you of the many options on how the district can use the San Antonio site, through lots of different processes. Dozens and dozens of options were looked at, were pulled down. And really, these are some of the more recent options that we've looked at here. Whether or not we create a new LASD elementary school, move Egan Junior High over to the San Antonio site, allocate the new site to the charter school, or delay building. And a few points I just want to share here. With declining enrollment, or a declined enrollment, I would say, because we're fairly steady right now, but have certainly lost. It's fair to say that I do not believe we need a new elementary school campus at this time, a 10th or that would be an 8th elementary school campus. I don't see that need now or in the very near future. Certainly in the further future, that could be a need for the district. In 2019, you'll remember that Egan was proposed to move to the 10th site and to build a new Egan there. And the community really strongly rejected that proposal, which launched the district at that time and the board at that time into a very thorough, facilitated community engagement process. I learned a new word at that time called a charrette. That was a new word for me, but there was lots of community engagement. If we also think about, over time, the boards have considered the idea of building a new school for Bullis Charter School to solve that overcrowding challenge and to provide them some permanent school facilities. And of course, we've discussed even this year, as we've been working with our team, Block and Quack, about when is the right time to build and design and all of that. And we know that the longer we wait to build facilities, the more expensive those facilities are to actually build. So these are the uses that we have talked about in the past and recent, and just wanted to kind of highlight some of those pieces over time. Of course, this is not a complete timeline because there was probably a good 10 years or so of work prior to this, 5 to 10 years of work before even just finding the site that was actually available and doable. But on the left-hand side, you can see there a timeline that really focuses more on purchasing the site and working with the site and going through the process, whether that's CEQA and passing a bond. And then most recently, just in the last month, updating those TDR programs and what have you with the city of Mountain View. And on the right, it talks a little bit more about the work of trying to solve some of those problems and looking at really what our needs are as a district around our facilities master plan and getting the work of getting ready to build a school site up and running. So lots of work has happened over time. And so tonight, I have a few recommendations for you. Number one, the staff is recommending that you approve and direct staff to plan to allocate facilities for BCS at the San Antonio site considering BCS as the first occupant starting in the 28-29 school year when the school is ready. Right now, it's on track to be built to accommodate 600 plus students and is being designed to be flexible around the actual grade level configuration. Ideally, we would, of course, love to complete this allocation and partnership collaboratively with Bullis Charter School. That's our first recommendation. Number two, this does not solve the entire challenge. And so because of that, I'd like you to direct staff to begin a capacity and financial study to determine the best location for a second smaller charter school campus at either Block or Egan to house the remaining students or in-district students specifically. Part of this study should determine grade level recommendations for each of the two sites. So this idea that facility allocations for this 28-29 could include TK8 or TK5 at either of those schools, and really what's the best use of the existing facilities, what's the best impact on our programmatic needs as we're simultaneously moving to a middle school model at both Block and Egan. And again, we encourage input from the charter school in this process. And then number three, upon completion of that work, once we have those details fleshed out and the recommendation has come to you, we'd really like to officially update our facilities master plan to include the intentions of the San Antonio site and the remaining second smaller BCS campus. So we have a very complete master plan for now and into the future. So I'm happy to answer any questions, but that's what we're asking of you tonight. Yes, hello.
For number two, I just wanted to clarify, when we're talking about a second smaller campus for BCS, that would be shared with the existing students at either Block or Egan.
Correct. Yes. So if we, right now, so we're talking about in the future, but right now their numbers are just over 904 students, in district students, just over 1,000. Eric, do you remember the actual number?
1,095.
1,095 total students. So if we're talking about 600, 650 at the San Antonio campus, then yes, just that remaining portion of students.
Any other clarifying questions before we go to public comment?
I have one. On recommendation number one, does that recommendation, is what you're asking the board to approve here is to put BCS on the 10th site? Or is it just to direct staff and allocate facilities?
It's really just direct staff to plan to do this, right? We're talking about the 28-29 school year. It's several years out.
No, I mean, but this is the decision of the board to put BCS on the 10th site. Is that what you're asking?
Yes and no. Right, because like, depending the process in which that decision is made, whether that's through a negotiated agreement or through a Prop 39 process, that official action would take place at that time. Right now, I'm recommending that that is the future action that takes place, and let us begin to plan of how to get there and do the work that's required to get there.
Okay.
I'm not trying to be difficult with that
No,
answer, but
that's
there's
fine.
like, legally, there's no action you need to take that says we are going to place these people at this school right now.
Okay.
But we need to work toward a more clear direction than what we've been doing up until this point.
Jim?
I have a question that kind of goes back to your discussion about challenges.
Yeah.
You had mentioned that one of our challenges is the sixth grade model and junior highs with declining enrollment. But so, sorry, I'm trying to think of what my question actually is, but it is my understanding, and I think this has been discussed before, but I know there's confusion around it. There is actually instructional benefit to having sixth graders included in that middle school, junior high model.
Absolutely.
From a curriculum standpoint, And
To a
so
student
it's,
outcome standpoint,
so it
yeah.
is, so it's a student benefit really to moving to that model.
Absolutely.
Okay, I just. Anyway, thank you.
Any other clarifying questions? Okay. Okay. I do see we have some folks for public comment on this agenda item. First will be Danielle James, then Pei Yu. Oh, sorry, I'm sorry. I missed Sang. Danielle James, then Sang Pururi, and then Pei Yu. This is the order that I received.
Ask for each,
I'm sorry,
how much time?
3 minutes. Sorry, 3 minutes.
Thank you to the board for your service. I know this has been a long process. And my name is Danielle James, and I'm a former LASD parent and current Mountain View High School parent and community member. For the proposal for the 10th site, I would be in favor of putting BCS TK through 5 on the San Antonio site. I'm sorry, I'll try to use your language, San Antonio site. That sounds different. Okay. With BCS 6 through 8 at Egan. And so factors in favor are one, this community overwhelmingly requested putting BCS on the San Antonio site during the very lengthy and involved multi-session community engagement process that occurred before the pandemic. And this community process included vigorously organized BCS community participation. So even like with that, with their very strong voice, it still came out that the overwhelming consensus was that that site would be good for BCS. And then number 2, having BCS 6 through 8 at Egan alone will provide cost and logistical savings to BCS with fewer sites for them to manage. And then Egan can be solely a middle school with both LASD and BCS there. And LASD can simplify its own logistics also by having one fewer shared site to manage. Also, good work and working with Mountain View City Council to get them to address that restriction of a neighborhood school. Some of them seemed disappointed not to have the traditional neighborhood school constrained to take the San Antonio site when they dropped that requirement. However, in the end, they might get some of what they wish if BCS begins to draw more from the area around the San Antonio site. So historically, BCS has drawn more from the area which is located, as one might expect, because it is convenient for families to attend a school that's close to them. And so more of those families will apply. If BCS were sited at the San Antonio site and drew more from the surrounding area, its demographics might improve along the dimensions that its authorizer, the County Board of Education, has long required, because that is the law. And so I thank you very much for the opportunity to. Thank you.
Thank you, Danielle. Sang Puri.
Thank you, board. My name is Sang Pururi. I'm a former LASD parent and school board member, currently a Los Altos High School parent. It's great to see the board finally moving forward with a decision on how the San Antonio campus will be used. Having studied these issues for over a decade, my recommendation is that BCS be located between the San Antonio and Egan campuses for the following reasons. First, approximately 2/3 of LASD students live in the northern part of the district. With continued development along El Camino, this concentration will only increase in the coming decades, locating more classroom space in the north with better aligned capacity where students live. Second, placing both BCS campuses near each other would simplify logistics for families with students at multiple sites and help reduce traffic congestion across the district. And finally, San Antonio Road, as a 4-lane arterial, is designed to handle significantly more traffic than Covington Road, which only has 2 lanes. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sang. And Pei Yu.
Hi, I'm Pepe. I'm an LASD parent, and I've been attending board meetings on BCS facilities since my oldest child is in 1st grade, and she's now at Los Altos High School. So for decades, BCS has wanted a single site, claiming that it was critical to their programming, but once a single site became available in Mountain View, they now are posturing they want to stay sharing with Egan and Block. So, and BCS also claims that they don't fit on the San Antonio site. My sense is that their enrollment is likely declining and stagnating at best, like many other schools due to birth rates. I've heard in the community that they continue to bolster their numbers by recruiting students from outside the Los Altos school district boundaries. And now those of us who chose to live in the Los Altos school district catchment and attend our neighborhood schools are negatively impacted by this. I urge you to move BCS to the San Antonio site, a brand new and permanent facility that they said that they want for decades. And if there's overflow, then I think we need to reduce sharing as much as possible. Sharing is challenging for many reasons. Both my kids are or have gone through it. And we need to reduce that as much as possible so that no school, that would be my dream, if they would collaborate with LASD and have a cap. But more realistically, they're not going to do that. And so I would say reduce that to one school, if possible. And lastly, I think families such as mine, we chose to move to LASD, to go to LASD schools, and we also deserve quality facilities. We haven't been able to have that because of this issue. And so I urge you to make a decision and go ahead and execute, because we need to upgrade our schools, especially Egan, which my girls attend or attended. And we can't do that until we figure out what to do with BCS. So lastly, let's resolve this issue and get BCS situated on the San Antonio site. Thanks.
Thank you, Pepe. All right, public comment is now closed. Would any board members like to provide comment on this agenda item?
Two possible corrections, Sandra.
Yep.
My understanding is that we're not allowed to dictate grade configurations.
Correct.
BCS can put whatever grades. The other thing is, I'm unclear of whether we can even dictate the number of students there. Barring the CEQA 6.
900, it was a 900 study for CEQA.
Okay, and then also we have an agreement with Mountain View, I think, that said it. Okay, all right,
And
so,
CEQA studied up to 900 students. So to clarify with your first point, Vladimir, we, depending on the process, but in a Prop 39 process, we allocate facilities for a particular grade level or grade span, right? They may choose, like we did this at Block when they first opened Block, we dedicated that space for 6A, but they ended up turning it into one of their elementary campuses, but it's about facilities allocation. We can't tell them what to do. Same with numbers, there's capacity, but they can ultimately choose, depending on the facilities that are provided for them, how they want to load their classes. All of those pieces are up to their discretion.
okay, that's fine.
Sure. I'm glad we're finally getting to this point, because I think this is sort of, it always feels like every step is the first step in a longer process. But I think, you know, as you laid out the possible uses of the San Antonio site, obviously, we've been talking about this for a long time. You know, we discussed this in February of 2024 and looked at a document that Jessica Spicer, who was on the board at that time, had put together that did go back over, I think, the whole
History.
10-year history.
Yeah.
That shows all of the discussions, all of the community input that we've had to get to this point. You know, of those, and we purchased the site in 2019 or 2020. And we worked through a very long community process, and then COVID hit, changed the whole dynamic, put a lot of things on hold. I know staff has been working behind the scenes in ways that haven't always been visible to the community, talking to the city, because COVID blew up the TDR program dynamic with the demand for office space and blew away our original deadline for constructing this. So we've had a long, productive conversation with the city of Mountain View and come to a new extension of that, which I think is sort of the inciting incident for why we are here specifically tonight, is because we needed to come to an agreement with the city about how how we and they, because they are also getting a 2-acre park out of the whole program, how we and they together would have a framework to move forward. And now we need to sort of put a stake in the ground, I think, in discussions with BCS, because our current BCS facilities agreement runs through this school year and next school year, but then we need to know what comes next. And so we need to give clear direction to our staff going into that negotiation, I think, into what we think comes next. And there have been people who have advocated for, let's just do what we've been doing for the last 6 or 7 years indefinitely. And I think with our enrollment decline and the impact to both our sixth grade program and our junior high program, that doesn't work for us anymore. Now, BCS, and I'm disappointed that no BCS representatives are here. It's unfortunately been their pattern for a long time of completely ignoring our process and our obligations and everything else and just throwing tantrums periodically. But I hope that they will engage. And if they want to come forward and say, look, actually, here's a plan where you guys could add sixth grade to your junior highs, and we can pull back our footprint and make it work. And then rather than spending what is going to be a lot of money on the San Antonio campus, we can invest that all in our existing campuses. I would love to see that proposal. I frankly don't think it's possible. But if that's the direction they want to go, that's fine. In the past, they have, in the brief interludes between asking for us to close a school and turn it over to them, some of their representatives have asked for building permanent facilities on their current footprint. But they've never been able to explain, what do we do with the kids attending school on those footprints while we build those things? So I think, I'm also disappointed that we're not gonna have an LASD program in the near term at the San Antonio site. But I actually don't think that the alternative is leave BCS completely alone and invest in our campuses. Because I think, unfortunately, given the history with BCS, I don't think they would accept that as an option either. I think if we have a plan that is gonna generate modern schools, we have to have a plan that generates reasonably fairly modern schools for all 10 schools that we are required to provide facilities for. And so I think citing that at the 10th site is really the only option to come to some kind of solution for the BCS. But I also think, and this is the decision before us, allocating, sort of going forward saying the San Antonio campus will be out of the BCS is the only one of these 4 options that makes any sense. As you say, a 10th LASD school doesn't make any sense financially or enrollment wise right now. We did propose allocating the San Antonio site to Egan. And then we had the longest, most thorough community engagement process I've seen in this district. And at the end of that community engagement process, I think the support for that option was in like 35%. And, I've heard arguments about not building the San Antonio site right now. I think, to me, that's maybe the least bad of the other options. But I think at the end of the day, it's not feasible for a number of reasons. It's going to cost incredibly more. And if we don't build permanent facilities for BCS at the San Antonio campus, I think we're going to end up having to do it somewhere else. And it makes even less sense anywhere else. So it's a long way of coming around to, I think, the recommendation takes.
Thank you, Brian. Stella?
I also support the staff recommendations, and based on the public comment that we've heard here tonight and also emails that were sent to the trustees, I would say that everyone who has taken the time to reach out to us has expressed their support for placing BCS at the San Antonio site.
Jim? You don't have to
I
make.
don't have any comment.
But this is a discussion, so if something
Yeah.
pops up.
I'll let you know.
And I want to be very crystal clear that what we are building is an LASD campus. And it shall say that it is an LASD campus. The first occupants may be BCS, but it is still an LASD campus. And I just wanted to make sure that that came through. I appreciate your use of the term allocate as opposed to give, so I do appreciate that. To Brian's point about engaging with BCS, I too am very disappointed, to be very honest with you. Justin Spicer and I have been doing this since 2014. It is 2025. It's been an exhaustive 11 years. And, and I feel like we haven't made enough forward progress in figuring out who is going where. So I do support the staff recommendations. We did give BCS a tour of the 10th site. We walked to the 10th site with them, with our staff, with Eric and Sandra. and saying, this is gonna go here and this is what's gonna go there, and it was, you know, it was quite a lot of staff time, you know, and I do appreciate that they came and walked the site with us. We also invited them to give input in the design of the site. You know, and I know that we are under a very tight deadline, and so we kept saying, you know, you've gotta give us your input by May, by May, by May. We did not get input from them by May. And that window I feel has closed now. But I feel like LASD has made many attempts to involve BCS in the process of designing this site, allocating them on that site, and I'm not really sure how much more we can do. I don't want to repeat what Brian said about the extensive community engagement process. It's been 11 years of a lot, and I think that we need to move forward. So for those reasons, and for what, you know, Stella and Brian have said, I am in favor of the staff recommendations.
Did I understand you saying that 35% of the people at the pre-COVID community engagement before putting BCS?
Well, the way that worked, no. So the way it worked, right, is that we went out to the community, we asked everybody for whatever their idea was. I think the number was in the 54 or something alternatives. And then the work of the charrette was to divide those up into categories and then kind of go category by category, and everybody for a given option would sort of say, yes, I'd be in favor of that, no, I would not be in favor of that. So the option to put Egan at the San Antonio campus, which the board had proposed, the yes, I approve of that option was in the 30s. Then the only options that were approved of by more than 50% of the attendees, and as I think somebody referred to, this was a group that had a very representative sample of BCS affiliated folks. The only options that were approved above 50% were the ones that allocated the San Antonio campus to BCS in America.
I'd like to also point out in my conversations with parents and what also came through the community engagement process is that I'm sorry?
Karen, who?
No, the community engagement process.
You said Karen.
Karen.
It came through, I think
Came
she said.
through, sorry.
Okay.
Sorry, what came through, the message that I received
Sorry.
from our LASD families, you know, perhaps they're not super jazzed about putting BCS on this, as them being the first occupants of a new site, but they were livid about us closing a school. And, you know, this is pre the last 4 or 5 years when a lot of schools have been closing. This is pre-COVID. And at that point, they made it very clear that the worst thing we could do is to close one of their sites down. And I do feel very strongly, you know, when weighing all the different family groups, right? The BCS families and their needs and our parents and our needs and our children. I think it would be irresponsible of me to not weigh more heavily what our families want. Our families have chosen to make LASD their academic home, right? And so, you know, I want to be respectful of that, and I want to honor that. And so, I don't know, that's all I wanted to say, is that I heard very loud and clear that do not close one of our campuses. Do not close one of our schools.
Yeah.
Even if it wasn't closing a school, even if it's just relocating a school. Our parents do not, the majority of our parents who spoke to me did not want to do that.
Oh, I just have a procedural question. Do we need to make a motion now?
Oh, yeah, yes.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be done.
How do you,
Go for it.
yeah, I mean, how do you want to phrase the motion? To accept staff's recommendations as presented?
Sure.
Are we ready to make a motion?
All written down.
Would anyone like to make a motion to,
I'll make the motion to approve the staff recommendation.
is there a second?
I'll second.
Stella? We have a motion, made by Brian to approve staff's recommendations as presented, seconded by Stella. Is there any further board discussion? Okay. Okay, in that case, all in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Yes.
Any abstentions? Motion passes with 4 yeses, 1 no, and no abstentions. Thank you. Thank you for all of your hard work on all of this. I feel like the hard work is starting now.
It's always starting again.
Always starting again. Oh, good times. The next agenda item, San Antonio campus schematic design review and approval.
Sure, I want to introduce our design build team that's going to come up. I'm Nick Stephenson. And Aaron Johnson with our architects, and Amber Emery with Block Construction. They're going to give an updated schematic design based on some feedback we received at previous presentations. The board.
Thanks for being here tonight.
Thank you for having us. Oh, yeah, thank you. Oh, yeah.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for making the time to meet with us once again. What we have here, I know you've seen it, this is the same presentation that we presented the last time we were here. And we've edited some slides, or we've added a couple slides to enhance the response to the questions that you've asked and to enhance the information contained in there. So we wanted to ask your advice, and as far as how you want to use this time, we can go slide by slide and go through it in reasonable detail like we did last time. Or we've made a shortcut and we put little red dots on all the new or edited slides, and we can just focus on those, bypass the repeats.
The unit, the edited.
Sound good? Sound good? Okay. We've got a
Not the preferred option.
We figured that's what you want, but we wanted to make sure you had all the
Thank you.
information.
You're great.
Okay, and with that, I'll go ahead and jump in. Then I'll hand it to Aaron, and then I'll hand it to Amber. So this slide here, the concept of capacity analysis slide, you'll see it has a red dot. What we've done here, we haven't edited the capacity table at all. It has the same exact information, number of total students, breakdown of grades and things of that nature. What we did do is try to clarify the way we were presenting the information. So before we were presenting it, every two-story building was kind of listed in duplicate, first, second floors, first, second floors, first and second floor. And that provided a certain level of information and understanding, but we felt it might also be clear if we just presented, here's the entire first floor, so to speak. So this is what every ground level building looks like. And we've color coded the spaces with orange that you see predominantly on the screen being the classroom spaces. And then, it breaks down to different types of spaces, as you can see in the legend there, admin, library, and restrooms are shown brown here, but we have a slide about that in a moment. But so this helps you get a picture of what is on the first floor as you walk around campus. And again, pointing your attention to I know the browns kind of bleed together in this rendering, in this resolution, but the little brown strips that occur in the classroom wings are toilet rooms, and we'll highlight that in just a moment. So you can kind of see where there are toilet rooms, where there are classrooms. That's kind of the big takeaway here. And then we just look at the second floor as a level. Again, the tables on the upper left remains the same. And here again, you can start to see how the upper grades start to fan out across the second floor of the campus, if you will. The one thing I'll point out here is the flex spaces, the unassigned spaces were left white. So that's what you see popping up at the corners of the building. Look. Okay. This is an overall campus site plan, and we've got the second floor dragged off to the right, outlined in the dashed line. And this slide is to illustrate the distribution of toilet rooms as it currently sits. And we've, of course, used pink and blue for the boys and girls, or girls and boys, I should say. And then we've also got staff restrooms illustrated, the nurses' restrooms, the TK and kindergarten restrooms, and even janitor spaces show up here for some reason. But now you can kind of see the distribution of class or of toilet rooms, because I know this was quite complicated. Yes.
So I had some concerns when I looked at this because it looks like there's, from my perspective, an insufficient number of restrooms on the second floor, especially if we're not connecting those buildings. It seems like it'd be tough for students to have to walk down to the ground floor and to possibly another building to locate a restroom for their user. And there's also the new Senate bill requiring that all schools have at least one gender neutral restroom. So I kind of wanted to explore what our options are as far as like, could we make some of these restrooms gender neutral, and or should we be connecting the second story? And at the very least, I think within a building, we should diversify between genders. So like building B, we shouldn't have two girls' bathrooms in the same building. you know.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of ways, we were just talking about this actually, on the way down here. I think it does point to the additional flexibility that the balcony can actually give you. To be able to just move between the upper stories of the buildings without going up and down the stairs. I think I was wondering the same thing about the building, what is it, building B that has girls' restrooms on both floors? But it does mean that there's a boys and girls on each level of all of the buildings too.
Right, but you could swap them.
You could totally swap that.
But then
too.
building C has like no bathrooms,
Right.
no student restrooms on the second floor
So
whatsoever.
yeah, and I
And-
think there's some additional exploration we can do as part of moving into design development. Part of that can be, you mentioned the bill about having a all access restroom for students. So we can look at like one of the staff restrooms or something like that, having a single occupancy one. We can also look at multi-occupant all access restrooms, which gives a bunch more flexibility. Because any student can use any restroom floor at that point. So those are all things that we don't have to decide right now, but that we can evaluate as we go into design development too.
Okay, great.
Thank you, appreciate that. Any further questions about this slide? Okay, feel free to speak. We'll just stop working on this.
Where's the which computers are connected to?
I'm sorry, Mars, can you advance the slide for me?
You shouldn't be closer to her, I don't know, keep it pointing towards her.
What about you?
The cursor is moving now.
Yeah, but-
That's
fine.
Oh, there.
Oh, there we go. Okay, that worked, thank you. Okay, this slide is, the overall site plan, as you can see, it shows all the buildings from bird's eye view looking down on the campus. With north kind of being, pointing to the upper right up 2 o'clock direction. And this is a slide you've seen before with the exception that we've added 2 section cuts. We cut a section through California Street and we cut a section through Showers Drive. So that we can kind of study the elevation changes and just kind of what it looks like at the edges of the campus, because I know we talked a little bit about that last time. And the red arrows illustrate the camera view for 2 renderings that we also added to the presentation. So you can see if you're standing across California Street, what the site looks like from that perspective of that 1 arrow on the right side of the screen. And then at the bottom, as you look up the site across Showers Drive. So let's move into that. Remember someone's zoomed in for clarity. I forgot to actually find that a moment ago. Okay, and here we go with the first section cut. This is the section cut through California Street, as you can see on the right of the diagram. So it just shows you, and it has a little person illustrated on the sidewalk, so you can kind of see some scale, but it shows you the grade differential between the site and the road, and how far from the road in a different perspective, how far from the road the building sits, and the beginnings of some landscaping and some trees, and even a fence that delineates the perimeter of the site, the secure perimeter. And you can see how all that compares to the finished floor level of the first floor of the classroom building. And this is intentionally cut through kind of an open outdoor area between building A and B, because there's some potential for programmatic use out there. Right now, we're showing that in the rendering on the upper right as bioswale, but we can manipulate the grades a little bit as we talk more about how that space might be used. And then this is the rendering, looking again across California Street toward the campus, beyond that perimeter secure fence line, beyond the landscaping, the trees into the building, and you can start to see into the courtyard where the kindergarten play area is. Yeah, just to give you a little bit better idea of what it's starting to look like. Now, this is the second section that we've added, and this is cutting through Showers and looking kind of northeast. Again, the streets on the far right, sidewalk in the middle with a person for scale. You can see the site has sloped down toward this Showers Drive a little bit, so there's not as much grade differential between that courtyard. This would be kind of like the building C courtyard, looking at building B. You can see it's much more flat right there at this point in the design process. You can see landscaping rendering and some shade. And then we have a rendering looking from across the street. So this is if you're standing in that kind of shopping center where the tire repair shop is. Tire repair shop will be way up to your right behind you. This is looking across at that middle school courtyard.
I have a question before you do this. So in the rendering, at least, it seems like students would be able to see out into the street pretty clearly and vice versa. And I'm a little concerned that that could be distracting for the students. And so I was wondering if we could, make sure we have shrubs that's a privacy screen along the fencing.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, yeah, and we struggle with that in renderings because we don't want to block the view of the building or
Right.
whatever we're trying to show. But yeah, that certainly could be a priority of the landscape design to make it more of an opaque vegetative barrier.
Great.
I think it's a great idea.
Is it on that same, like, how, is it cost effective to do more solid evergreen trees along that side? Cause I mean, the same distraction applies to the second floor, maybe even more than the first. So like shrubs and a swale aren't gonna screen off the second floor.
Eric had something to say about the windows.
Yeah, sometimes, we can put on some tinting to, allow the natural light to come in. But then also, students are usually seated and the windows are up a little bit higher, so that sometimes, depending on which room it is and where it's laid out, they're not sitting down like looking straight out windows, so it's not as distracting as you might think. But there's a lot of, architectural design elements that we can put in. One is the foliage and trees and things like that, but then also some of the window tinting can make it a little bit less easy for people to see in, but then also make it not so bright coming in as well.
Yeah. So that's, I think, yeah, to answer your question, we can specify trees that would grow taller.
Well, we can do a lot of things, but how material is the expense of like, trying to say like, I want this width of. Evergreen trees.
I mean, any landscaping solution is not gonna be prohibitively expensive, I think these are different. Especially like a project of this scale, if we wanna plant a few more trees or different types of shrubs and things along there, that's not gonna be.
But I think we're talking about planting mature trees.
Yeah, exactly, that's just
Those
buying
are
larger trees.
expensive.
Yeah.
I mean, they are
Yeah,
relative to smaller
the
trees, but.
$1 billion are not much, but yes, they are the bigger gallon size. They do get a little bit pricey,
Yeah.
but, when we come up, and then doing like the frosted glass and the tinted glass, that's not, very much of a cost impact, and we've done that on numerous folios, depending on how they're oriented,
Yes. Excellent question, thank you. Yeah. With that, I'm gonna hand it over to Aaron, who's gonna talk through the building layouts and then where we should move into the toilet rooms.
Sure. And there's less changes on these slides, so we'll go through these pretty quickly. This one hasn't changed at all. You can see the admin and the TK classrooms with the staff room and restrooms to support that. On the second floor here, the only change is really adding that, the restroom here. Otherwise, everything is as shown before with, what is it we cover, 3rd and 4th grade classrooms upstairs, as well as art and special education.
I have a question.
Yeah.
about the Special education.
Yeah.
Has that been, discussed with our special education staff? The second story for special ed?
I don't know that we've discussed that specifically with staff yet, but we can definitely.
I would suggest that we talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it might have to be relocated to the first floor, that's one.
It could, yeah, I think it might be that we need more than, one on either floor is fine too.
Okay.
We have exterior elevations, talking about some of the materiality, and so we're bringing some different color materials into the buildings that we talked about last time. That kind of front view of the reception, having nice visibility over the main entry into campus. As well as the courtyard view, kind of looking past the multi-use room on the left towards the main entry and into the TK indoor play area. Building B, first floor plan, the only change here as well is the additional restroom court here.
Oh, wait, sorry, question about first floor of building B. So there's a call out for the folding partition between the two classrooms for grade 1. But I didn't see that anywhere else in the floor plans. And so I wasn't sure if that means that that's the only folding partition or if the other ones just weren't called out.
I think it's more that the other ones weren't called out. You can see kind of the same the graphics shown like here and here.
Well, at like our last study session or the last time we met together, I had pointed out that I think most of our classrooms don't operate that way. There'd be very few instances where they would want to share the space. And I don't think it's worth the trade-off of like the sound traveling through the partition. And so I think we may be interested in keeping those partitions on the ground floor because for the lower grade levels, it would give us some flexibility. Let's say we needed to, instead of using a classroom as a first grade room, then we could use it as a kindergarten room if we could make it larger. But on the second story, since we're not planning to use any of those for the lower grades, then I would like to see solid walls between the classrooms.
Yeah, that's no problem.
Thanks.
Lots of where you- So the second floor, additional restroom port here as well, and like we said, have that operable partitions here, but we can take those out. And then on building C on the first floor, we also have the restroom port here as well. And building C on the second floor, I think we just have the staff restroom here. It's the only change. We can see that courtyard view looking back across the different classroom buildings. On the multi-purpose room, we did have a little conversation last time about the kitchen and the serving area and the access to the seating area. So we changed that around to respond to that, kind of flipping the kitchen and restroom locations here so that the kitchen's on this corner, so we can have serving windows that face out to this area between the library and the NPR where there's a covered outdoor eating area. We have the two restrooms here. There's a vestibule, doors at either end, so we can control access and security based on use of the site. And provide access from the NPR or from the outside without necessarily giving access to either. So that kind of responds to some of those comments and also kind of puts the kitchen in a place where it makes more sense from a serving standpoint. There were also some questions about seating and kind of outdoor seating capacity. Just doing a quick preliminary layout, we feel like we can fit about 220, I think, ish seats between this area, between those two buildings. And there's room in some of the other outdoor spaces on campus to kind of get that outdoor seating up to about maybe 360, something like that. So that's kind of about where we're at right now, the outdoor seating. Here's those extra elevations. And the library empty, so you can see the outdoor seating area here. The gym hasn't changed at all, or the field house restroom building as well. So that remains as presented last time. Same with the main entry. We talked a little bit about landscape design concepts and some of those trees and shrubs and getting that kind of stuff. Just preliminary ideas for that we'll refine as we go forward.
I have comments on the landscaping. So while I did request shrubs as a privacy screen, and I'd be in favor of trees for the same reason, as well as, you know, adding shade to the campus, I'd like to think about the landscaping in terms of its functionality, right? Like if it's serving a purpose to either provide privacy or shade, then I'm all for it. But if it's merely decorative, I would say I'd prefer to save on the landscaping budget and use those funds elsewhere, such as to add on the connecting bridge for the second floor. Like I really care a lot more about the functionality of the design than just like the decorative element.
That makes sense. Another major landscape element that will be present on the site is, I mentioned earlier, about bioretention and biofiltration areas. So any stormwater runoff that hits any paved areas or the buildings, we have to send through a natural filtered environment. So that'll actually take up kind of big chunks of that too, which will be more of a natural landscaping. One thing that I think we're getting to the end now is some of the interior concepts, but before we get to Amber, there's one thing that we didn't talk about that I wanted to touch on a little bit. Going all the way back, one of the other comments that we had talked about was the potential noise from this side too. So part of our process and part of kind of meeting all the code and sustainability requirements we look at is actually doing noise studies of the site. So our acoustical engineer had already gone out and taken measurements on the site, it turns out, identifying the sort of background noise levels. He was there at a time when the shop was open, although it was a Sunday, so it probably wasn't the busiest time, or maybe it was, I don't know. That works for a tire shop, but didn't hear any noise from that. Measured, collected data points, all 3 places along this perimeter that the background noise level was below standard practice, and there's actually a kind of a guideline for this in the City of Mountain View general plan. And so it was below all of those requirements. We kind of passed along the specific question that you all had, and so we looked at it in more detail, and even like Google had found a report about noise hazards in auto repair shops and the specific noise levels for different tools that are used. And essentially looking at that and the fact that buildings kind of rotated 90 degrees and faces the target parking lot, and that most of the work takes place inside that building, even if the doors are up, he's not worried about the sound from that equipment kind of really impacting noise on the site or raising it above those background noise levels that are recommended. So at this point, based on our observation and work, we're not too concerned about that being an issue. Unless anyone has kind of specific experience about that being like super loud, and we can do more measurement or something like that if that's necessary.
I always joke, I think an elementary school recess is pretty loud.
Yeah. It is. That was a good point.
I live across the street from one.
Do you?
Or the PE, actually, I think it's the first.
So, probably, so I'll get you back to your slides. There you go.
So the budget slide, so we just added some more clarifying information, so 117 million hasn't changed, I think we did update the estimate a little bit. But still that same 117 million, just wanted to break it down, our previous like board meeting, when you had voted on this, we had said about 105 to 110 million. For this scheme, because we gave you 4 schemes and we didn't have enough time to do like a detailed estimate, but we also noted that it was in today's dollars. And so we had done for this last meeting, done a more detailed estimate, and also added in the cost escalation of 7.5%. So it's basically what got us to the 117 million. So we estimate about 5% escalation per year to midpoint of construction, so it's about 7.5% from August dollars to the midpoint of construction. Obviously for this project, we're gonna be very strategic about when we bid. Like right now, bid numbers are good because things are a little bit slow. There were a lot of bonds that passed last year, so next year we're gonna start seeing more of those come out over the next year or two. So we're gonna hopefully try and bid as much as we can before that, and there's a lot of things we can do strategically about timing our bids. The different seasons of the year, there's better times than others, so we'll definitely work on that to try and get the best bid price. Yep.
So, sorry, it's cut off from the slide, but we've received a separate attachment that had the 4 alternates that we talked about. And so I was wondering if well, I'm interested in exploring some of those alternates. So is that something that we would want to do as part of this agenda item or part of the next?
I think we can bring that back for design development, before they get into construction drawing, we for sure need to have an answer on what alternates we want to add or delete. Whether we want to add the bridge or remove the restroom storage buildings like that can all be done at the next update.
Okay, well, I'll just want to finish my comment at any rate. Just FYI, the 2 alternates that I'm interested in, one would be the connecting bridge, as we've already discussed, for the second story. And then the other would be removing building F. We kind of like skipped that slide earlier, but if you don't mind going back.
Yeah, sure. It's the first thing.
What slide?
That's the restroom.
So it shows like both the gym and the field house.
Yes.
And because the gym already has men's and women's restrooms as well as city storage and a city office, I don't see the need for this additional field house, which duplicates a lot of the exact same, uses, and not building the field house would save a little over 1.4 million, and I'd much rather use those funds, on the connecting bridge or other needs that arise.
What about the garage maintenance and storage areas?
Well, the storage, it's for the city. I think we've already covered that. I'm not so sure about the garage and maintenance, so maybe Eric could.
Well, so tell me what you covered then. What was the result?
I think Stella's suggesting deleting that whole building.
Yeah.
I know, that's what I'm saying. I
Right.
understand.
Right.
I can understand getting rid of the men's and women's restroom somewhat, right? But I'm just curious about the garage and maintenance and storage areas.
Well, I think if whoever's doing maintenance on the field and needs those spaces can buy a tough shed. Like, I just feel like if we're trying to set expectations about what we're gonna build.
And that's
the building seems overkill.
That's what we have on our existing campuses, right? Our sheds.
Yeah, and then the district maintenance staff would be responsible for the overall upkeep of the site. And then there's a lot of custodial closets and for, storing custodial supplies and cleaning these things. That we built.
We have two pretty good sized storage rooms in the jungle.
And my question was about building F. I mean, we talked about like bringing utilities out there for maybe future expansion, but
Yeah.
not doing that building, so I would be in favor of not doing that building. But I have another question. I don't wanna upset the apple cart. But, like, we've heard public comment, we talked about some different things, like. Our goal is to build a school that probably in the future we will use, and more than likely it would be an elementary school, and so I'm just wondering. If when they're doing studies and we're going through this process, if we decide. Like, there's no reason to build locker rooms. Like, can we, like, when do we have to make, are we making that decision right now? Or are we making that decision potentially down the road?
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely make that decision down the road.
Okay,
What you're making the decision right now is, should we continue with the design
okay,
as proposed? And if we say yes, then we continue with the design with the locker rooms, but you can make the decision to remove those locker rooms closer to, obviously not after we start building it.
right, yeah,
And not right before, but we have some time to do that. It's designed where it has a different roof structure than the rest of the building, so deleting it would have very little kind of knock-on effects on the rest of the design. So
okay,
it wouldn't cause a bunch of extra work for us essentially to delete it. It would be some, but it's not a huge deal. And we designed it that way intentionally because we knew that, this was a potential change depending on how things get worked out and depending on answers to questions that we don't have yet. Right?
okay, and then, sorry, just so,
Can I just say one thing?
yeah,
I'd like to remind board members that we're only asking clarifying questions at this point, not discussion. Because after clarifying questions, I will take public comment and then we can have discussion.
okay.
So if it's a clarifying question.
Well, it's
you respond
clarified to me. I mean, I can wait. Well, no, but it is kind of like another, like, can we change things? Because I do remember in a study session. One of the things that we discussed is, I think. TK through second has to be on the first floor, and if they're on the second floor, they can't, and so. Again, if we decided that we weren't gonna, like, we're going after this design TK through 8 because it has the most flexibility for us, but if we determine that it. Really something else hadn't. Met our needs better.
Well, they can be on the second floor, but they have to be grouped with their, you can't have
okay.
fifth graders on there with the kindergartners.
Okay, alright.
So they have.
So kind of the way that
Like
these
space
buildings are
children.
designed, that would probably work as well.
Yeah, if you wanted to take the, like the second floor of the building that has the TK rooms in it now and make
Yep.
that first grade, that's fine. We have to, I think where that becomes a little more complicated is if we do start connecting them. Because then the egress is quite separate.
Yeah.
So, as separate buildings, if we put, if you go to the next one, right? If we put, first graders and second graders on the second floor, okay, that's fine, because there's only first graders and second graders up there.
Well, yeah, sorry, I don't wanna go into that, when you were going over the budget, I was just thinking, like, if we're making changes, how does that affect the budget,
I think-
and when can we no longer make changes?
I think you're asking about the level of flexibility we have.
Yes.
Here
Yeah,
tonight.
Yeah,
Yeah, so the
so
only
this is
risk,
final, and I'm just
Yeah.
concerned.
the only risk in making changes at this point is essentially just like if you change your mind on things that makes it so we have to redesign something, then there's a little more work for us, and so we get compensated for that extra work. If we're talking about changing the name on a classroom, that isn't extra work. Right, so it's entirely related to how much the change is.
Okay,
And that's kind of like I said about the locker rooms, like there's a little bit of work for us to update the drawings, but it's pretty isolated because of the way the building is designed.
right, yeah.
We did that on purpose.
Yeah.
I have a clarifying question.
Yes.
The colors that are shown, just for illustration purposes, like,
Correct.
and to differentiate the various different.
Exactly,
colors.
yes.
So we could have neon orange and neon yellow and stuff like that.
If that's what everyone decides they want.
Yeah, that's like a lot. Good time to figure all that.
Yeah, sure.
Anything else on the budget slide? Is, schedule, so we've got the board meeting tonight, we're eager, so the amendments next on the agenda as well. So we're eager to get some potholing work, going, I think mid next week. And we're getting ready to start that work out there, just so we can make sure and verify what's underground there and figure out as much of the unknown, unforeseen items as early as possible to make sure that's all incorporated and engineered and designed. So we have less surprises, once we start demo. 'Cause we always find some treasures underground, but we're gonna try and minimize the surprises as much as possible. So that's what's coming up next, and then, yeah, continuing with the design goals to get that Inc. 1 site package into DSA by mid-December. And we really kind of have to hold to that because we want to keep it in this code cycle. If we don't get it in by December, then we have to design it to the next, code cycle. And then, yeah, in the spring, the buildings will go into DSA. And the goal is starting in May, so that way we can get it open for the 28th school year. So a little bit tight, we don't really have much float left in the schedule, but all very doable if we can keep things on track as it's going. And then lots of coordination of stuff going on. Nothing, none of that's really changed from last time, but there's been a lot of stuff going on in the background, coordination that has to happen to make. So, yeah.
The budget number's been updated to account for possible tariffs.
That is a good question. It's a very good question. So it's part of the escalation. I don't have a crystal ball. Definitely like in August, we're still trying to figure out the impacts of the tariffs. So I haven't seen anything directly. There have been some rumblings with some of the stuff from August that could have some impacts. I haven't seen any drastic impacts, but definitely it can. I'm sure there are going to be some real effects of it, but no. Yeah, it's still kind of up in the air, which is how it's been for the last year. We hear some stuff, but I haven't seen anything big, but yeah, it's
All right, thank you.
that would be that 7.5%.
I'm gonna take public comment before we get in discussion. We have one public comment speaker, Mr. Sangford.
Thank you for your time. The initial design is compelling and represents a major step forward for the district. However, its default assumption of a TK8 configuration will not serve the long-term needs of the district. The San Antonio campus will cost over 100 million and serve the community for generations. We should make sure it serves the long-term population trends of the district. The surrounding areas have the highest student density, which will continue to increase relative to other neighborhoods. To meet that demand, the design should prioritize TK and kinder capacity, so more local elementary children can walk to a nearby school. This would significantly reduce traffic for families who currently drive to Almond, Santa Rita, and Covington. The San Antonio campus should include 4 TK classrooms with appropriate access to bathrooms. TK kinder classrooms are not needed at Egan or Blocks, and Santa Rita, Oak, and Loyola already serve nearby children. I urge the board to vote no on the proposed design or revise the default design to be a TK5 school with 4 TK and 4 kinder classrooms without locker rooms, similar to the structure of LASD schools that have had 600 students. Once capacity planning has been completed, the configuration can be revisited as needed. This approach best aligns with the long-term needs of the district. Thank you.
Thank you. Board discussion.
So I think it brings up an interesting point, right? Because we've had several of our elementary schools have had 3 or 4 sections of TK and kinder in the past. And looking at this layout, it is a little bit more challenging to see how you would expand TK if we got to a point where we needed a 3rd TK and then the following year you would need a 3rd kindergarten. It's not obvious to me how you would then accommodate that. So I don't know if you can talk to that at all.
Good question. Yeah, I mean, it definitely is designed for, as people pointed out, for this configuration. I think if, in the terms of kind of what we were talking about earlier about a design change, it would not be that difficult to reconfigure some of the other classrooms to also have restrooms adjacent to them and kind of set them up more like the kind of vertical wing of those 2 classroom buildings. is not configured that way now, and that would change the configuration. That can happen within the kind of structural envelope of the prefab buildings that we're doing in a very similar way to the other legs. It just changes that design and configuration a little bit. So if it's kind of as we were talking about before, if that's a change we want to make, whether that's now or sometime in the future in the design process, that would not be overly difficult to do. It would involve some of what we were talking about before about thinking about, you would need to have some of the first and second graders on the second floor of one of these buildings as well, and we need to make sure that the circulation is appropriate for that too. So there'll be a few follow-on changes, but
Oh, yes. Well, I had the same question as Brian. I had asked Sandra about it previously, and she informed me that actually the restroom requirement only applies to TK for kinder. It's more of a recommendation and not a requirement.
Yes.
In fact, I have a kinder student at Covington who's now not in one of the kinder classrooms. So her classroom doesn't have a restroom and they make it work. And also the larger size requirement isn't enforced for kinder either. So you could put a kinder class in like a classroom that's currently designed for a first grade.
absolutely. Those are like design recommendations from CD. They're not operational requirements.
Okay, that's good.
So yeah, you definitely can just decide to move kindergartners into one of those other rooms, and there are restrooms nearby. That's would also be a completely appropriate way to adjust to that change. If you made that decision in time for us to make a design change, great. If it's later on and that changes, that's an easy way to make that change as well.
Can I ask another, I don't know if this question is to staff, but I hate to talk about restrooms, but I feel like it's the thing that sort of jumped out as a little weird. Do we have a standard sort of number of restrooms per number of classrooms for other campuses? Or do they just sort of happen to get built?
I don't know the answer to that.
There is a building code
Yeah.
requirement for that. We have to do a plumbing calculation for that. There's a certain number of fixtures per people.
So it's fixtures per people. Like
Yeah, it's not per classroom, because
Restaurant per
it's the
class.
same thing for if you go to the movie theater, right? Like it's a certain number of fixtures per person for different types of buildings have different coefficients essentially
So,
for that.
yeah, so I guess, I mean, the way I think about it is, we're planning the site and then just said we're gonna allocate it to the charter school. So we're gonna have hopefully we will have a negotiation at some point with them about specifics. And so I'm a little bit uncomfortable with the current plan and just the notion of like, some kids from this building go to the bathroom in this building and some kids from this building go to the bathroom in the building across the courtyard. And so I don't know if there's a way to fix that, for lack of a better word, but like, and maybe a bridge between A and B would help so that at least like fourth graders that are above, because I also can't quite picture how the third and fourth graders that are above the TK kinder area cleanly get down the stairs and like out of the kinder courtyard. Like most of our campuses have enclosed TK and kinder spaces. So now you're asking a third grader, which some third graders can do, but some third graders are a little bit iffier to like, have a number of steps to get here's the bathroom and back.
Yeah.
For sure.
The other thing is that you can make the bathrooms gender neutral, which a lot of the folios like actually that we're doing right now are doing that, or instead of it being a boys restroom, it would be a gender neutral and you just do the floor to ceiling partitions or you do full height walls.
Yeah.
We're seeing more and more of that as well, and your comfort levels, but that can fit in
And
there.
that gives kind of maximum flexibility for all kinds of reasons. It also improves the level of privacy for students, which we've often seen as a big benefit, because a lot of kids don't feel comfortable going to the bathroom at school. And that's not great for their comprehension either. And so we see that a lot where we'll do, restrooms that have full height walls and doors for the toilets, and then the sink area is just open. Right, so that staff can see in there, so that it's easier to supervise for staff as well, but also just more flexible and more private for everyone. So on the buildings that we've done like this that have those layouts, we just put like a set of double doors at the front that just get held open during school, so you can see right into the hand washing area, and then it's essentially the same layout. It just has full height walls instead of partitions there.
How much would it cost to build a model of the site?
The whole site. We've done that for a couple of projects, as you can get them 3D printed now. So we can say, because we're building a virtual model of that's where all these drawings come from. Is a computer model for this, so we can actually do that. as a 3D printed model. It depends on how big you want the scale to be, you know, if you want it to be the size of this table or something. But it's, you know, not prohibitively expensive. It's, you know, in the low thousands of dollars, I think, somewhere in that range.
Okay.
Maybe we've done them where you can like take
We've
the
saved
roof off and see the
$1.4
plans and
million.
stuff. Yeah, there you go. You can definitely buy a few models for that. But yeah, if that's something you guys want to do as we get further into the, you know, it's because we got the design locked down, so it's a little bit easier for people to imagine.
Well,
and see.
before we have the sideline.
Yeah, yeah, right.
Before we build it.
Yeah, definitely before we build it, yeah.
Oh, well, unlike Brian, I love talking about restrooms, so I'm back for more. Is it
Yeah.
gonna cost more to do the gender, would it cost more to do the gender neutral, the floor, full length?
It's a couple of
Doors.
extra like fire alarm devices and exhaust fans, but not,
Okay, not significantly.
Yeah, it's a little. No, we're seeing that more and more at kind of all levels. We did projects at Mountain View and Los Altos high schools that both have all access restrooms like that. And we're seeing that discussion more at active elementary school and middle school projects that we're doing the same thing.
the two folios we're having design our building right now have.
Yeah. Mhm. So that's something we can also explore as we go into design development, but it kind of have an extra benefit in this case because of just the configuration, having this many buildings and the configuration of the restrooms and stuff, it does just make that more flexible.
But we can do a mix there, right?
You can too, yeah, we could
All
do,
three types of bathrooms.
you can, and we've done that on campuses too, where we just want, you know, that's more choice.
Yeah. Right?
Well, and I will kind of rescind my previous comment, which I think was also not timed correctly, apology, but about the connecting bridges, because if we could go for the gender neutral restrooms, then we possibly don't need the connecting bridges
Right.
because that costs
Yeah.
$500,000. And it creates this problem, which I hadn't thought of, about if you put the first and second graders up there, then that's like now an issue. So
Yeah.
I would definitely like to hear more about gender neutral bathrooms.
Yeah, we can evaluate that more and when we come back next time, kind of show that design and think about also, as you said, kind of having some restrooms that are traditional. Maybe those are the ones that are like in the NPR or in the gym could be more gender traditional.
When they're saying.
Uh-huh.
Are there any supervision issues if you have floor to ceiling walls?
It's actually in a lot of ways we find better for supervision because most of the shenanigans, as one principal called them, in a restroom happen, you know, around the sinks. And that's now any staff member can walk by and see that part. It's now open for everyone to see. We do need to make sure that they're supervised. We don't want to have a lot of spaces where students can lock themselves. So we want to be careful about that. There's little things that we'll do like have the doors, like the closer and the doors set so that it stops at like 10 degrees before it closed. And you have to like pull it the rest of the way closed so that by default you can just see if there's anyone in there or not. Because if the door's not closed all the way, then that means it's not occupied. There's just little things like that that give visual cues and stuff. Yeah, or a kid that forgot to close the door, but that's less likely.
TK.
Yeah, not in the TK. Yeah. But yeah, there are things like that, but like, I think that and kind of how we place security cameras and stuff, that's actually one of the things that we found administrators really wanting and seeing a benefit from is actually improving the level of supervision in those spaces. And, you know, it's also where a lot of bullying and stuff happens too, right? And that's kind of usually in the hand washing part of the bathroom, if for lack of a better term. And so it makes that part more visible.
I was thinking more about a child who doesn't come out.
Yeah, I mean, that is a challenge and that's something that we've talked about at different places too. And there are different kind of approaches to this, but, and you know, I think there is kind of a key override of those locks too. So that from a safety standpoint, if you know, staff needs to get in there, they can get in there. But those are all kind of considerations to weigh and to look at through these designs. And we can provide there's actually a group at, I think it's like St. Paul Public Schools in Minnesota, an architecture firm that they with that did a really kind of exhaustive study of this. And they have a really great report that we've referred a lot of districts to that can kind of walk through the different options and it gets into the cost, but they did a bunch of surveys and stuff too.
Send this out.
Yeah, can you?
Yeah, absolutely. We also did, one of the projects that we're talking about working on is at Sunnyvale Middle School, just down the road. And we did some surveys with the staff, with the students there as well, around like, what their impressions of the restrooms are, do they use the bathroom at school? Are they comfortable using the bathroom at school? And would this kind of, we asked a lot of those questions and things too, and that was really eye-opening, and partly to like, how many kids don't use the bathroom at school or don't feel safe using the bathroom at school? And that, this is a way to kind of approach that question differently.
Well, so when we are reviewing and approving the final schematic design, what we're really talking about is we're approving these buildings laid out in this manner. And then all these other concerns are gonna follow.
Yeah.
So,
It's in the final design, schematic design.
I think that's a good way of putting it, like,
Okay.
we would incorporate all of these comments and review those as these are
right,
appropriate to
but
proceed. with the
what
design.
we're approving is just, we're gonna put some buildings here, this is how we intend to lay them out. Except for building F.
Yeah.
These boxes can change, but the boxes are gonna,
Okay.
the layouts and the exterior shelves.
Okay.
Any more questions?
Yeah, that was me, my question.
That's good.
But also, procedurally, do we have the opportunity for our, teachers and principals and stuff to take another, I don't know if they've been involved the whole way, or if there's an opportunity for them to take another look, but it seems like it would be valuable, because we're doing a lot of supposing based on our experience with our kids on our campuses about the dynamic, but I would love to make sure that we get the staff's input before we really nail that requirement.
We've done a little bit. After the last meeting, we talked to Kim and Kate and yeah, but yes, we can do more of that.
Absolutely.
Do you mean schematically or?
No,
Okay.
on a sort of, on the further detail.
Okay, all right.
We actually have these buildings in these shapes, as a maximum, right? Like, I wanna make sure all the way down to like, if for some reason we have to delete building C, we don't run into problems, like, that's the level of flexibility that I'm looking for.
Yeah, no, that would be great to get a little more, especially as we get into the details of, like, we talked about the restrooms and things like that, right? Those are good things to get more, staff input.
That things are important.
There are.
Yes.
If you're, are you ready to make motions?
No, I want board to finish discussing. Okay, so. Is there any further discussion? No.
Could I suggest make a motion to add the word nearly between the word the and final?
Approve the nearly final?
Yes.
Can we do that? Well, like, people think it's teaching.
Because we're having the final.
It's not the
But-
final, it's the schematic,
but
design. I got that
final
final design, that's
schematic.
helpful.
Yeah.
Schematic design is,
That's why I asked that question, like,
what's the definition?
Schematic.
you're saying
It's the final
Outline.
format.
It's like kind of the outline.
you're not
of the
gonna
building.
change any of the buildings other than building F. Right?
Like how we organize the buildings.
I don't really care. I really don't care.
That's what we- Okay.
No, it's just, yes. It's just gonna be the final schematic. I believe.
Would someone like to make a motion to approve the final schematic design for the San Antonio?
So,
Thank you, Vladimir. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Stella. Any further discussion? Okay, motion to approve the final schematic design of the San Antonio campus was made by Vladimir and seconded by Stella. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you, appreciate it.
On to number 3, amendment number 1 to the design build agreement with Flock Construction. Eric, this is yours.
Just a few seconds ago, you heard the updated schematic design from our design build team. And tonight we are formalizing amendment number 1, which will allow them to continue with the current design and the current cost estimate, the not to exceed amount for extra additional design services. You heard Amber talk about potholing and site investigation. And it's pretty important to get ahead of that work before they start doing trenching and demolition. And that will actually save the district money. They have some information known before they get into demolition and site facilities. It's also for early procurement. Before COVID, you could buy things on the shelves like large switch gears now have to be pre-ordered. Sometimes 6 months to a year in advance to order them. So this will help them with early procurement for those type of items. And this has been reviewed by legal counsel. This is approval of amendment number 1 for the design build contract with block construction. It'll be in it for $116.8 million. It's an action item. And then still to bring it up. We couldn't fit the alternates on the slide deck that you saw earlier, so we attached the current schematic design estimate as a separate attachment, and we showed the add alternates. And then as the design build team discussed, they will actually be reviewing that. And then if we decide to remove add the bridge, the restroom storage building would be, there would be a change order, a deductive change order in the cost of it. And actually,
Oh, I thought we were gonna do some. Okay, sorry. Oh, boy. All right, is there any public comment on this agenda? Seeing none, public comment is closed. I assume a clarifying question? Yeah, please.
So when we're bumping the number up, I just want to make it clear so that I make sure I understand also for the public, we're not committing ourselves to spend $117 million. We're just resetting the contract with the current design, but we could still spend less than that if we could still be building at for the back or
Then the locker room.
locker room.
Yeah, correct. So tonight, amendment number 1 will be a not to exceed amount of $116.8 million. And then if there's any changes or additions, that would happen at a later stage. Also, this is the cost estimate not to exceed at this time at schematic design. And then as we get into design development, there'll be another estimate given to the board. And then once we get into DSA submittal, and that's when we will get into what we call a guaranteed maximum price. And that will be the maximum price, and that will be the final locked-in price for the project at that time. So there'll be 2 other opportunities where you'll get revised estimates for the board to approve.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Then may I get a motion to approve amendment number 1 to the design build agreement for the 10th site project? Thank you, Vladimir. You have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Stella. Any further board comment? Okay. Motion to approve amendment number 1 to the design build agreement for the 10th site project was made by Vladimir, seconded by Stella. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. Motion passes unanimously. All right. Bond funding overview.
Okay, my pleasure to introduce Makiko Sato, who you've met before, and presented to the board several times. She's our financial advisor with Eichmann Advisors. She's going to give an update on our financing schedule and talk about the original financing schedule and just give a very brief update on our current assessed value and talk about our schedule of financing and issuing the first series of bonds later in the spring. So I'll give a hand off to Makiko.
All right, good evening, board members, superintendent, cabinet, and the Los Altos community. Thank you so much for your time this evening. I'm thrilled to be here to give an update on the bond program. So since 1998, district voters have been very supportive. They have passed 3 different bond measures. The 1998 Measure H bonds have completely been issued and repaid. And the 2014 Measure N bonds, 150 million. The district issued the last series of bonds from that authorization last year, and that will be fully repaid in 2044. And of course, Measure EE passed in November of 2024, 350 million. All of the Measure EE bonds have yet to be issued. I did want to share this information. Some of the board members have changed since I presented this prior to the Measure EE election. So when the district was considering how to size the bonds, we took assumptions that were a little bit more on the aggressive side to get to that $350 million. And so you can see various assumptions that we adjusted from the baseline model, which just raised 286 million to get to 350 million. Some of those included being a little bit more optimistic about assessed value growth, which we thought was appropriate given the history of assessed value in the district. Being a little bit more optimistic about the district's borrowing rate, given the district's strong AAA rating. And then finally, the bond series, instead of assuming 3 series of bonds issued every other year, shifting it up to 4 series of bonds. So the trade-off there is though, even though the district could authorize a 350 million in bonds, it meant that the timing of accessing those funds will be spread out over a longer period of time. So why does spreading it over multiple years help? So a couple of things. First is the key one. The district wants to stay within the tax rate target provided to voters at the time of the election. The $30 for $100,000 in assessed value. That's actually the maximum under Prop 39 as well. And by issuing the bonds over multiple series of time, it allows the tax base to grow, which helps very much in terms of managing the tax rates. We also want to keep an eye on the statutory bonding capacity. So whenever the district issues bonds, it needs to be able to certify that the total amount of bonds outstanding doesn't exceed 1.25% of the tax base. And then the last 3 are just different elements, but mitigating interest rate risk by issuing the bonds over multiple series, similar to the concept of dollar cost averaging for investments. Whenever the district issues bonds under tax law, it needs to have a reasonable expectation to spend down 85% of the bond proceeds. If the district doesn't meet these requirements, there could be arbitrage rebate requirements to the IRS. And then finally, the 5th one, lower interest expense. We want to make sure that the district is timing the bond issuances closer to when it needs those funding to lower the amount of interest expense that taxpayers will need to over time. I mentioned assessed value earlier. We do have another year worth of assessed value information. In 2026, the assessed value grew by 5.2%, which is a little higher than that 4% assessed value that we assumed in the model. So that was great. I do note that growth rate of 5.2% is somewhat lower than the historical averages that you can see above the bottom. I also wanted to point out, this is something that I've been doing more, is that assessed value is different from market value. And you can see the distribution. I'm sure that if you're driving around the neighborhoods in Los Altos, you're not seeing a lot of homes on sale at $1 million or even $2 million, but you can see that a quarter of them are still assessed below $1 million and 48% below 2 million. So this is a graphic representation of the Measure EE design that I showed in that table form earlier. So you can see the series A, B, C, D model. The debt service layers on top of each other, kind of like a puzzle piece to keep the overall tax rate at that $30. This is the original financing model. So I know that 2025 is about to end and the district hasn't yet issued the first series of bonds, but we wanted to show what the original model looked like here. And so on the right-hand side, the original model assumed a fairly equal bond sizings per series, with the first series of bonds being 90 million. I did also want to touch a little bit on the bond market movements. This is the MMD 10-year rate. So just looking at what the borrowing rate for the 10-year for a hypothetical AAA rated state issuer. And you can see that there's been a lot of volatility over the last 20 plus years. Interest rates are definitely higher than they were in the historical lows between right after the pandemic, really.
But in 2025, interestingly, since September 1st of 2025, when there were some bad job reports, the interest rates have come down quite a bit. You can't really tell in this graph so much. It's that little dip on the very right-hand side. But you know, we are getting close to historical averages. So in terms of a sample issuance schedule, it typically takes 2 to 3 months to issue bonds. Based on our conversations with the district and when the district is likely to need the bond proceeds from the first series of bonds. We've shifted that from 2025 to 2026. Contemplating, kicking off the financing early next year in January with board approval in March of 2026. Shortly thereafter, the district will go through the rating process, receive the rating, post a preliminary official statement, with the aim of pricing bonds in April of 2026. With closing of the bonds, actually issuing the bonds and receiving funds at the beginning of May. We like this schedule a lot because it also works well with the county's tax rate setting process. So there shouldn't be, if we are able to follow this schedule, any, too many additional resolutions around the tax rate setting process this would kind of seamlessly work together. I think that's it for the presentation.
Thank you, Makiko.
I just want to point out one thing that's, sometimes, and I've mentioned it a couple of times, and I will always toot our horn, is, last year we had our district rating upgraded to AAA. And very few districts in the state of California. How many districts percentage have this in the state of California?
No, they're testing me, but it's very low. I want to say, fewer than 20 school districts. Yeah.
And so one of the things that we talk about is the reason why the district, obviously, we have a great tax base, which is important for that. But we have great cash flow, adequate reserves. And so by having our general fund being very sound and in good shape, that helps our story for the credit rating agencies. And so when we sell these bonds, we are hoping to get a very the same rating. And we just want people to know there's a reason why we want to have good reserves and have good finances in the general fund, because that actually saves our taxpayers money. And so when we sell the bonds, we get a better rate because we have good credit rating. So I always want to point that out and toot our horn about credit ratings, but then also, the general fund and having cash flow. This will be the second year in a row we haven't done a tran. So that also helps us look good that we were able to manage our cash flow by not borrowing from the outside. So those are things that we always want to let the public know of being really good stewards of public funds.
Thank you. Any comment? Any questions? Public comment? Don't see any. No comments opposed. Any further comment or questions?
Yeah.
Please.
Back on the measured double bond analysis, it's not particularly about that, but my question is, if supposing we had passed a $450 million bond, does the tax rate cap mean that we would have to issue more tranches, or would we not be able to issue $450 million?
Yeah, so it's, the concept is similar. You would either not issue the bonds, for a long time, or you basically be waiting to issue those final series of bonds after, let me look at the chart.
No, it's not this particular, just in general.
Yeah, in general, it would mean that you would be, when you have capacity, so it would be starting in like 2050, you might be able, that authorization doesn't expire. So that 100 million that you weren't able to access, you'd start to be able to access as the capacity under that $30 opens up. And, based on the current projection, that would be around 2050.
Okay, so regardless of what the dollar amount for the bond measure is, we cannot issue any particular bond that exceeds the $30 per $100,000 maybe.
Yeah, so under Prop 39 for an elementary school districts, $30 per $100,000 in assessed value is the limit per authorization.
Okay,
So the district could, have another bond measure and get another $30 capacity.
Oh, so you could actually have
Yeah.
a bond measure Did you have two bond measures on the same ballot?
You could.
Great.
You know what? I don't think,
I've seen districts do two, I haven't seen anybody do three.
not
Never mind.
successfully. I've seen, you know, three, but not successful.
Stella, please.
I just wanted to thank Eric for being such a good steward of the budget and getting us that AAA rating. And I wanted to thank Makiko for being here and for preparing such a detailed presentation because I wouldn't know the first thing about how to time the issuance of the response.
On page 4, assessed valuation. How does that track the economy just in general? I mean, presumably, if the economy tanks, it goes down.
Yeah, so because it's under Prop 13, these assessed values aren't exactly at market values. It's interesting because it actually does protect you a little bit during market downturn. So if you remember in 2008, 2009, 2010, 11, 12, those were tough years in terms of probably if you were looking at your, you know, home prices, there would have been a pretty significant drop. But when you look at assessed value, the assessed value growth flattened out, but it didn't drop because so many people's assessed values were so low, even though the market value dropped, you know, quite a bit, your assessed value didn't really drop because you were way below the market value. So it does in some ways, you know, over the last 10 years when the economy was really good, you know, the assessed value grew significantly, but the dip doesn't dip as much because of the Prop 13.
You have another question?
I have another
Please.
question. Municipal market data. So it looks to me here that when the economy tanks, like in COVID, the interest rate also goes down. Would you say that's a general, I mean, I'm not holding you to any specifics,
Yeah,
that's a general characteristic.
that's generally true.
Okay, that's all.
Okay. I mean, that's why, you know, when you see that dip in recent weeks or, you know, since September 1st, it's because of the jobs market data was not very good. It looked like unemployment's going up, you know, job creation is lower. But we've seen periods where both the stock market was going up and the borrowing rates were down. And so I feel like really since 2008, that relationship's been a little strange.
Okay.
But yeah, generally you're correct.
Any other questions, discussions while we've got Makiko? No? All right. Thank you so much,
Thank you,
Makiko.
Makiko.
Thank
Thank you for making the time being here. Thank you very much, Eric. Right, next is our Measure EE program update.
Okay. You. You can join us if you want to. Sure. Now I want to introduce Miriam Safari. She's with Cumming Group. She's with our bond program management team. And so we're gonna talk a little bit about Measure E, how to get an update. We have some homework assignment in front of you. It's a very big spreadsheet, just so you can look at it, that'll answer some questions. And as the previous discussion, with the design build team, nothing has been set in stone, so this is like, kind of like a high level rough draft of what Measure EE bond program will look like in some form or fashion. Tonight, we're not asking you to finalize a project list, finalize the budget allocations. Tonight is more, very similar to what you heard earlier. It's more discussion and give staff some direction on things that you want us to look at. And then we'll kind of go over our slide deck and then we'll try to answer any questions you might have. And then please feel free to interrupt us, ask us any questions. I want to thank Miriam, who's been working overtime. Her and I have been working a lot together over the last couple of weeks to put this together. And I'm going to go through the slide deck first, and then we can kind of dive into any particular questions. So the big picture, we want to look at our bond program as a big picture. We are committed to building the San Antonio campus. and opening that in the fall of 2028. We also programmatically conversion to middle school is a priority for the district, is what is best for our students. So that is we're gonna try to do those two things in the same time frame. During the facility master planning process, we know there are lots of needs, over 700 to $800 million worth of needs. But we have to spread those needs across all 9 school sites. We can't address all of the needs with Measure EE. We'll talk a little bit about cash flow. And what Mikiko was saying was, you know, even though we have authorization from the voters for 350 million, we can't issue all the bonds at the same time. One, you can't spend the money that fast to do all the projects, but also we have to remain within the $30 per 100 assessed value. So we have to be in those tax rates for Prop 39 bonds. And then the bond program is just like our general fund. It's a multi-year expenditure plan. So when we do bond programs, we're going to issue the bonds during a certain year, and then we're going to spend those bond funds, and then we'll issue the next series of bonds. It'll be Series A, Series B, so on. And it's just an expenditure plan. The financing, the money, the revenue is coming from selling the bonds, because we've been authorized by the voters to do so. And then when the money comes in, it goes into our bond fund. We'll spend those funds appropriately, and then we'll do the next issuance when we need cash. And I'm always mindful is we only issue bonds when we need the cash. We don't issue them to hold on to them. There are tax implications. You can't just issue bonds and then earn interest. The federal government, the IRS, does not like that. So there are some things which you have to do. And then we want to have stable tax rates for our homeowners. I'm a strong believer in for our senior citizens, for all of our families. They want to have a stable tax rate. They don't want to see their tax rates go way up one year, way down next year. They want to have that stable tax rate throughout their home ownership. And then we need to have a continued investment in our facilities. And what I mean by that is our facilities are aging. Our facility master plan is very clear. There's lots of needs. We need lights, we need roofing. We came in this room earlier this morning for a meeting. It must have been 1,000,000 degrees. The HVAC's not that great. This is actually a portable boardroom, if you did not know that. So but that's a perfect example of all of our school sites where kids do the learning in those classrooms. They need lights, they need HVAC, they need new roofs. So all these things need to happen. Our bond program, it is really a long-term approach. The San Antonio campus, we do have 10 schools on 9 sites. So when the San Antonio campus is built out, that will help alleviate many things that we need to have happen. It'll help us with our middle school model. We also want to modernize all of our existing sites. We want to address the highest program priorities. We want to, one of the things is portables. We want to avoid using them for temporary housing, and we do have a lot of portables on our campuses. But the idea is if we can phase the bond program correctly and do early procurement and get the people under contract early. And if we're going to do a school modernization, let's say we do here at Covington or any other school, you want to purchase the HVAC equipment, the lights early on in like January, February, so they're here. And then you start demolition during the summer. And if we're just modernizing the classroom, just HVAC lights and so on, you want to be able to do that, not have to put all the kids, start the school year off in temporary housing, because there's a cost to doing that. The idea in the bond program number 2 would be implement remaining programs, removing any other portables that we want to remove from our sites. Renting portables is fine for short term. I think Sandra mentioned there's some of our portables are 25, 30 years old. Yeah, there's certain portable at certain school sites, they're very old, and it's just not cost efficient to be doing that. The facility master plan, I just wanted to point out the bottom right number. That is the amount of, that's hard cost and soft cost. So you have $700 million worth of needs just for our 9 school sites, right? And so that there is a definite need for our school sites. As you walk around, our schools are very well maintained, but there's a lifespan. And if you go home tonight and you go, oh my gosh, I'm so glad it's raining tonight and my roof doesn't have a leak. Tomorrow, I'm a little worried about what reports we'll get for what leaks, right? Because we did have a heavy rain, and despite maintaining our facilities, things need to be replaced. If you have a roof on your house that's 25, 30 years old, it's probably past its useful life. Proposed issuance schedule, but Kiko kind of talked about that, and we're trying to, as we plan our bond program out, when we issue the bonds, it's going to be every other year. And that's kind of the financing plan that we're looking at. So sometime April, May of next year will be the first issuance. And these are the dollar amounts. And so once we get this issuance schedule, and now if assessed value grows, you can maybe issue more, right? But it's all based on the market conditions, what our needs are, and also we can't issue more bonds and sell them unless we can be under that target tax rate, right? So the expenditure projections, and that's kind of what we want to go over. This chart that we attach as one of our attachments is the construction cost, the 109 million. The soft cost is 32.7. So we added, I want to make it clear on this slide. The construction cost is the hard construction cost. And then when you heard about the amendment of being 116.8, some of that extra dollars are in that soft cost, which is design fees. And we'll break this out. Once we get the whole program organized and approved for a final project list, we'll be able to break it down, all the hard costs and soft costs as well. We are going to have a contingency in there. So the total project that we're anticipating for the San Antonio campus is 141.7 total. And that's hard costs and soft costs. So don't forget when you approved a contract tonight for CX commissioning consulting, that's a soft cost. You approved a contract for additional boring for the new building location, that's a soft cost. So those are the type of contracts that we'll be bringing to you to the board. There'll be testing and verification labs, inspectors and so on. There might be another consultant for audiovisual equipment and so on. So those are the types of things that will be soft costs that we'll be bringing you to the board as we go. And then anytime there's a budget change, we'll be asking the board to approve a budget change for the San Antonio campus, but then also for any other projects that we have on our project list. And the board will, anytime there's a budget change, scope change, the board will be approving of that every time. The other 9 school sites potentially in 6 phases. And as our bond issuance schedule is in 4 different phases over 8 years, we can't do all the other existing 9 sites all at the same time. So we have to do it in phasing when the cash is available. So the construction cost is 150 to 160. The other soft cost is 50 million. And so we're talking about 210 to 220 plus another 141. And don't forget, we also have about $27 million of cash of Measure N still available. So when we add this up and add about 12 to 15 million roughly for construction contingency for escalation, that's pretty much 375 total of what we're planning for revenue. We're not including state funding at this time. We are going to be getting in line for some state funding for new construction and modernization, but oftentimes you'll get in line for the state to get in for state funding. You don't get the money, you will not receive the funds until several years later. So if that money comes in later, that could be funds for other future projects that might not have enough funding for Measure ED. The proposed project list scenario, and we only showed one scenario that is on this big piece of paper. We didn't want to have 5 different scenarios because it would have been paper all over, and we're mindful of our tree friends. But we also wanted to get some direction from you, and then we can sharpen this up and bring back a different scenario or a different type of way of presenting it to you. So phase 1, we are going to look at Egan and Block. A little bit over a month ago, the board approved a contract with ADIS Architects. That's a soft cost, right? And that cost is to do a design study of middle school model and whether we're going to need to build new classrooms, modernize a few classrooms to convert them to 6th grade classrooms, to build new classrooms, or can we use existing portables based on what we decide to do at those schools? So there's a lot of options out there, and when we bring that study back, finalize the San Antonio campus final design, then we can have, and once we know exactly how much we're going to have to spend to get 6th graders in the fall of 28 and what's the most cost-effective solution, we'll bring that back to the board for approval. So phase 1, this is almost like an exercise, like a charrette, right? That it's going to be new classrooms and locker rooms, because as we're adding more kids on campus, are we going to have to build another locker room to get 6th graders there for the PE classes? Total budget about 17 million. We would need to start construction by 2027, just so it's ready for the fall of 28. And I wrote pending study by ADIS Architect on 6th grade feasibility of what is the most cost-effective way to get 6th graders on campus. Phase 2 of projects would be Oak and Santa Rita modernization. The total budget is 42 million. And if you look at your, list, we try to break it down, where you could see the construction cost and the soft cost. And so for Oak and Santa Rita, Oak was 19.5 and Santa Rita is 22.1, and that's what we're budgeting now. And as we get more information, we'll adjust those accordingly. Then I want to remind people what is modernization. Modernization of a classroom wing is new heating, ventilation, and cooling, fire alarms, roofing, lighting, exterior and interior paint, carpet, classroom, audiovisual, lunch canopies, restroom upgrades, path of travel upgrades, and any kinder TK play yard upgrades, which would be, things that make the safer or more age appropriate. The schools haven't been modernized in a while, so our fire alarms, other districts are doing a fire alarm upgrade right now, and they're becoming very expensive. So when we modernize a classroom, they're gonna make us upgrade all the fire alarms in all of the buildings. There's also a thing called path of travel, which we're putting money in our budget for this. Path of travel is when you build a new building or modernize it, from the parking lot all the way to that building, you have to have a current code compliant American Disabilities Act path of travel. So that means the concrete, the parking stalls have to be no more than 2% cross slope. 2% cross slope is like flat almost, right? And so there's a reason for that, because it's for safety. So people in that are disabled in wheelchairs don't fall over. But the 2% cross slope is very hard threshold. And when we had to do the Gardner Bullis parking lot last summer, that was one of the things that DSA required us to do. And that's why that project took longer, because we had to go back to design and kind of redo the parking lot to make it compliant. So those are things that will come up, and you'll be hearing these words: DSA, path of travel, access compliance. Those are words that will increase project cost. Phase 3, we're talking about doing Springer, Almond, and Gardner Bullis. And that very similar in the total budget for those 3 schools is there. And this is not the order we're suggesting. This is just an exercise so you can see what the planning has to happen, and then how much and then we also have to time it. We can't do all the projects for the highest cost earliest. We won't have enough money, so we have to spread the projects out appropriately. Loyola Covington modernization, 46 million. And then depending on if we get 6th graders at Egan and Block, then we would come back and do Egan and Block last, in the last phase, to do the rest of the classrooms modernization. So this is just a kind of a thing. And then Miriam and I talked about this forecasting. If we just took the total construction cost and times it by 5% a year over the course of the bond program, we would need $12 to $15 million of just escalation. So when we develop our program budget, we will have a project budget for each project. Then we're gonna have a program contingency. And in that program contingency is gonna be that $12 to $15 million. And as projects save money and come under budget, then that contingency gets bigger. And then if we decide we want to make a scope change or increase a project, scope in a project, or add more to a project, or no, we want extra this, then it would come out of that contingency. And then as projects get more expensive due to construction escalation, it will come out of that contingency as well. So those are things to be mindful as we develop our program budget. And this is kind of what the phasing of the projects will look like. This will change, and this will change every year based on the cost. This is a sample of this is kind of what it looks like. And then scenario 2 was very similar, but less costly. And once we get the study from ADIS, we'll be able to give you a good recommendation, and they'll be studying the classrooms, the current capacity. The current 3rd graders are going to be the 6th graders that are starting in the fall of 28. So we'll be looking at our enrollment, our capacity, how many classrooms do we need to build for the fall of 28 for our current 3rd grade class matriculating to 6th grade at the middle schools. Can we use the existing portables? I know there's discussion tonight about we heard some public comment about what some of the public's thoughts were on that. And so we will study that. We'll study all options and give the board the best options to save the district the most amount of funds, but then also to be able to implement 6th graders. Open Santa Rita modernization, Springer, Almond, Gardner Bullis, and very similar, just going back through. And then the phase 6, Gardner Bullis has 8 classrooms and a restroom building and a custodial office that are all portable rentals. And so when Gardner Bullis was reopened, half the campus was kind of modernized. And then the district did not have a bond fund available to do it at that time. And there are portables out there. And so the cost of doing some prefabricated TimberQuest type building, something like that, we were gonna budget maybe $15 million. And maybe we would do that as a phase 6, depending on funds available, or if this was a priority to the district and to the board, then we would get some direction and that might move up depending on how we do that, right? But anytime you move one project, one area, another project gets pushed back somewhere else. So there's always, there's options and trade-offs. And then really looking at what are the priorities of the district. Really, I always think of like programs first, programs for the kids. I think the San Antonio campus middle school, and then we have to decide as it collectively and get some direction on what is the next priorities. And we don't need to decide that today, which is good, but we want to be able to show you kind of some of the thoughts and things we're thinking of. Phase 2, these are the total costs. If we use existing portables at some of the schools, if we use existing portables at Block and Egan to bring 6th graders in, that's probably the lowest cost. But there might be some AD upgrades and things that might need to be done to still allow that to happen. And we wanted to kind of show a campus of the Block school map. And this is kind of the proposed plan, and that's based on the master plan. But again, that was also building new classrooms. We're not advocating for that. That is a plan. And we can do that, but there'll be a cost of doing that as well. And then also an Egan school map. And then our next steps is, it will not happen tonight, but we will bring as we discussed internally in staff, we'll be bringing back to approve Measure N, and because there's still remaining Measure N dollars, and then approve Measure EE project list and budget at a future board meeting. Makiko is really a trusted advisor, and it does take a village. So when Makiko's here, and I have our underwriters and Catherine, our other team with us in bond council, the district's very fortunate. We've got a good team to help support us. We will talk to the board again in early January, talk about the finance review to do the first issuance of Measure EE. And then once we have after 60 days of approving, of certifying the election, that's when we have to create a citizens oversight committee. So it'd be, if we started that committee now, they would be overseeing nothing because we haven't sold bonds yet. So we will be certifying the election in the spring of 26. And once that happens, we will certify the election, and then we have 60 days to create a citizens oversight committee. You're allowed to have the oversight committee do Measure EE and Measure N, and that would be our preferred way to do that. We would give them separate presentations on the expenditures for Measure N, and we'll spend all of Measure N dollars first before we start spending Measure EE. So there's less to manage, and you don't want to commingle. We will have the bond funds and 2 separate funds, sub-funds, so they're separated. Very similar. So that's our next steps. It's a lot of information in a short time, and I know it's been a very full agenda, but a very important agenda to this group. So we're here to kind of talk about questions you have, and we like bringing big charts and graphs. We like numbers, right?
And surface some priorities.
Yes. Yeah, and I think really, there's a lot of things we can do, and I always say we can do in education, we can do really anything, or really can really do everything, but we can't do it all at once, right? So we can do a lot of things, we just can't do it all at once. So really ask, kind of ask some questions of us of what are some of the priorities and things that you guys think the district should be looking at and studying, and then what things you want us to bring back to you in the future.
If anyone has public comment cards, please submit them. Any clarifying questions before we go to public comment? Any requests for public comment? All right, so we're up for board discussion. Who would like to start? So,
Well, I noticed that we have a member of the Bond Oversight Committee here with us tonight, and I just wanted to thank her for her service. And I liked what you laid out in scenario 2. I thought that looked pretty good to me, so I'd be interested in pursuing it.
I have a question. This page that you have highlighted some cash flow concerns as you go through this.
Mhm.
And so I'm just wondering,
How's it managed?
yeah, how is that managed? And you know, we were just celebrating our AAA rating and all the wonderful things, and so are we taking hits every time? Potentially,
This cash flow won't impact our credit rating.
okay,
But we can't, it's very, we have to be mindful of not, signing contracts and starting projects unless we have the bond dollars in the bank.
okay,
So we'll have to be mindful of, and this will change a little bit right now, it's, we're hoping that the San Antonio campus, once we get the design development, estimates, and then once we get in construction drawings, that number will go down a little bit, and that will help us also. And then I'm also not including, there's a specific reason why we didn't, we're not including the $10.4 million in TDR proceeds. That's helping us with our general fund to meet cash flow for payroll and to keep our credit rating and not having to do a tran. So the TDR money, and then and we know the Malone Guyer TDR will be coming in, we hope soon. We're not counting on that.
right,
But right now, if we just do scenario one, looks like we'd be short, get my glasses on here, about 18 million. But if we have a 10 million TDR and there's some other things that change in, we'll be pretty close.
okay,
We can also, we were thinking of issuing Series B in sometime in January, which would be Q3. And if we had to move that up a little bit, we could. But we want to be mindful of that as well. So cash flow for the bond program is super important. We have a very large project, the San Antonio campus, at the beginning of the bond program. So that puts a little bit of constraints on projects moving forward. But once we do the second series of bonds, sometimes in the Q3 of January 27, 28, then the rest of the projects will have a more normal flow. But the beginning of the bond program is really focused on the San Antonio campus, and that there's some it creates a little bit of cash flow because you can only issue the bonds every other year is our financing plan.
and this is in scenario one. So Stella mentioned scenario two looks good, and I think maybe the ADA study is gonna help us determine whether we need to go with scenario one or scenario two, is that
Yeah.
a fair?
Yeah.
But so if we did go with scenario two, not this cash flow concern might change because we're not spending as much money building new buildings, right?
Correct. And if you look at expenditures for San Antonio, that's kind of what we're spacing out. But if you look for expenditures for modernization, there's two large numbers, 5.4 and 4.8 million for like new classrooms and new modernization work that could be done at Block and Egan. And that's gonna be hitting our expenditures before the financing comes in. So as we get into the study with Aegis Architects, they can help us with that as well. And this right now is theoretical,
Right.
but we also, I'm very conservative. And so I want to make sure we don't sign a contract that we don't have the financing to pay for at that time. We have the financing, but not at the right time. So we have to be mindful of that. There's only time in the whole bond program where I'm super nervous about the cash flow. It's usually at the beginning because of the large project at the beginning.
So I'm a little uncomfortable sort of process and transparency wise. Moving forward with something where we're deciding that we were just gonna do modernization for every campus. Without another round of consultation for each of our campuses. Our campuses are all in very different states in some particulars, and like some of them have had HVAC work done and other work done. And so like at a high level, it seems reasonably fair at a first pass that like we're gonna invest in roughly the same amount of money in each of our campuses. But I'm not comfortable saying, and that's going to be like paint and carpet and just these modernization things for all of our campuses. I think at a minimum, we need to give each school community an opportunity to say, if you have $22 million to invest in your campus over the next 10 to 12 years, how do you want to allocate that? So that's sort of where I come from, because I mean, this is less work than we hoped we were going to be able to do on our existing campuses the last time we talked about this and the last time we presented it to the public. So, you know, at the end of the day, there's kind of no getting around the top level number, but I could easily see that some communities would say, you know what, especially if we're gonna trigger all this DSA stuff, like maybe we just do a new multi. And we don't do the modernization in this round because you can do a new multi for far less than modernizing the entire campus, and maybe it's like, this is where we kind of need to get into the next layer, but like, I'm not super comfortable right now with like us making that global decision without even giving our communities a chance to weigh in.
I think a chance to weigh in, some input is good, but we also, the community doesn't know the costs of repairing HVAC problems that are constantly happening, right?
Sure,
Like,
well, that's, we need to present that.
yes,
But we can't, but that's like, we
sure.
need to be able to present that, even if we end up here, we need to be able to say why.
Sure. And I do know one thing is, I know a lot of, community members and parents, they might spend time in the multi for their events and functions, but kids spend their day in a classroom. And so I always try to prioritize, and not that multis are not important for every school site, but when we look at all these options, I also, having done multiple bond programs, classroom modernization is super important because that's where kids spend 98% of their time.
Sure.
Either it's a flex room or an art room, it's a classroom, right?
Right, and that's also where the teachers spend all their
Yeah.
time, so if like
Yeah.
the teachers at a campus, like that's, we need the help of the teachers to sell it to the parents potentially, right? And
Yeah.
if the teachers come to us and say, look, we've discussed it among ourselves, and yeah, like the improvements to the classroom will really make a huge difference to our lives, the kids' lives, the educational program. And we can stagger on with this unusable multi or office or whatever for another 10 years, then I'll take that, but I'm not currently willing to make that decision for each of our communities.
Yeah.
And the only issue I have with scenario two, like spending, being able to do the 6 to 8 cheaper is great. But I'm a little uncomfortable with Gardner Bullis then being the only campus that gets new buildings.
Well, and I wanted to clarify, when I say I like scenario two, the main thing I like about it is that we're spending less at the outset on new construction at the junior highs, and that we sort of like get through all the modernization first. And if we run out of money, it's gonna be at that last phase, which is currently new classrooms, right? So it's possible that nobody gets new classrooms, right? But I'd rather see all the modernization go through
Sure.
if we don't need to construct new buildings at the junior highs. But I am definitely open to exploring other ways to spend. Let's say we do end up with 15 million left. We may not, because the escalation wasn't included, right? We may end up with nothing left. But if we had like 15 million left, I'm interested also in exploring like how we could use it. It's not just the classrooms, that I would be interested in. So like we could consider multis and other things.
Yeah, or new buildings at junior highs. Like I think you can make an argument that if we have a very limited budget for new modern facilities, then the fairest thing is to do it at junior highs because the kids then get to go through it as opposed to like trying to, and then, hold off on our modernization. But the issue is that like some of our campuses have all, like this campus has more permanent build stuff than other campuses. So we're gonna have to balance all these things. And I just think we need to bring the community, like now that we have concrete numbers and concrete timelines, we have to go back and bring the community along with us again. Because otherwise, somebody's gonna say, wait, I don't even get anything except new carpet, and that's not for 7 years, and they're gonna freak out.
One thing is if the district does get some state funding, it comes in usually later. Then that's always like a nice surprise to get. And then then the board would say, okay, we're gonna get $4.5 million of state funding. Then the district and the board would work together to find out what's the best way to spend that. If it's after $10 million, then maybe we've got some money to build new classrooms and so on. That's all, or a new NPR or whatever.
In your vast experience, managing construction projects for schools, how many times have they come in under budget?
Well, if you're super conservative, always. I think, we always try to budget conservatively.
How many times?
Yeah, most of the time, yeah. But again, depending on the type of project. And if you budget conservatively, you should be under budget, but then there's a problem. in my, I don't know, I don't say vast experience, but in my experience, that you have to be careful of scope creep. Oh, we're gonna modernize this classroom, but since we're doing that, we're gonna add this and this. And then, oh, since we're doing this building, let's just do this building now. And now the project that was 10 million has morphed into 18 million. And so that's where, we have to be mindful that we're not also over designing. We don't need, Sandra laughed at me when I say, we don't need a Lamborghini design, we need a Honda Passport. Because a Honda Passport's a great car, it looks good, it works great, but a Lamborghini is super exotic and nice to have, but we're limited, right? And so, I think if you're budgeting conservatively, you'll stay under budget. But then there's also a thing with DSA, they have a red pen. This is blue, but they have a red pen and we sometimes call it, it's really a bad term, but they bleed all of your drawings. You'll have a drawings and Amber is here. Yes, Amber will remember. So when you submit your drawings to DSA, they have reviewers. They review three things: structural, fire life safety, and ADA compliance. And your drawings are going to be submitted and they're supposed to be up to the current code. But they said, no, this needs to be changed. This needs to be changed. And now your estimate was like 10 million and now it's an extra $1 million because DSA has a thing called back check. And then they check your drawings and you got to bring them back and have all their red marks approved and changed. And then those red marks usually cost more money. If you're in construction at one site, you get into the earth and go, oh, this used to be where they landed airplanes at Fremont High School in Sunnyvale. And at the high school, they had this brick cistern and it was basically a hole in the ground with bricks around it. And they had gasoline. Well, back then they had lead in gasoline. So the soil's contaminated. That was a big change order. And then your budget had to be changed. So that's a good example of things that sometimes happen. Whenever you're modernizing old buildings, there's like unforeseen conditions. Amber is gonna try to go out there and not find anything in the San Antonio campus. But sometimes you do find pipes that you didn't know that were there. They weren't on any civil drawings. But if you have some contingencies and allowances built up, that usually protects you. But again, there's always unknowns, right, in construction. I hope I answered your question.
Well.
Yeah.
I have a comment.
Yeah, please. Sorry, I meant questions or comments.
I kind of just want to echo what Brian said about, I mean, I don't think we need to go back to the schools and do that full master planning thing again. But I think because we don't get engagement here where this information is being presented, I do think that it is true that there are some expectations out there that maybe if we can figure out a way that, sorry, because I know you have so many other things to do, but to engage the community to let them know, like, here's a modernization plan and this is what that looks like. And also, anytime we do something, DSA finds extra things for us to do. And because again, they're not here. And I think some of them probably have some expectations from that facilities master planning process that aren't now a reality for them. So, yeah.
Well, and just to be, sorry,
No, it's okay.
just to be clear, like, I'm not suggesting that we reopen it, like,
Right.
you have a master
Yes.
plan for your campus.
Yeah.
But now the question is, okay, what's the sequencing of getting there?
Right.
And that's, I just wanna make sure that.
When was our master plan last updated? I think that's.
Like last year.
Last year.
Yeah,
Yeah. Big process.
And then.
yeah, that was a whole big process, we don't need to reopen that process.
Yeah, no, I don't,
Remember if priorities came out of that process for each school? I believe they
And
did.
then the priorities was modernization.
Right.
And then we had a second priority list, which was like new construction. And then, so there was different priorities in the buckets of funding. And the very bottom that I showed was like, if you look at this slide here, it was like, oh, well, our bond measure is only 350 million. But if you look at all these priorities, in fact, on the slide, the very first set of rows was modernization, Then we had a program, like new programs, new construction, new classrooms. So the NPRs are in there, but they're down in the priority list.
Yeah, but this wasn't generated, or my understanding, I shouldn't say, assert that it wasn't, but my understanding was that. This is how we set it up, because it made sense, like, to do this monitor, like, I agree that if we had. 50 million more dollars. Then it would make sense to me to modernize all of the campuses. And then keep going, but we don't, and I just think that it's worth like
Yeah.
double checking and
Yeah.
like presenting them with whatever, because, Eric, when you talk about sort of, you do the whole campus and like ADA issues and DSA issues. And so part of my question is, like, are there campuses where it makes sense to mitigate that risk by, like, if there's a campus that needs a new multi, like, can we just do the multi and then we don't touch the rest of the campus, and so we don't have to redo and I don't know if this is true, but we don't have to redo like the whole path of travel for everything, and we don't have to like, because that seems like possibly a way to sort of like be more
Yeah.
cost efficient in the sense of like being able to add somebody to a campus without having to redo all this other stuff. And maybe it doesn't pencil out, and I don't even know that well, we probably do have to, never mind. Maybe it doesn't pencil out, but I just, like, we at least have to sort of, as I said, bring the community along with us and talk about this.
Well, I do wish that Steve Talia were here actually, because I believe he was the board representative on the Facilities Master Planning Committee, right? Along with like bond oversight committee members and other members. So there was a committee that then like provided feedback and that led to sort of that priorities list. And they also like had some recommendations of like, we think you should, tackle these projects first. I remember shade sales being one of them. And so it's just, like, I think we can go back and look at that, but I wouldn't want to sort of like go back further in time than that, right? Like we already had a committee do work and make recommendations. Why don't we start with that and like see we can review what those recommendations
Sure.
were.
I mean,
And
yeah,
discuss.
and maybe we end up in the same, like, I'm not saying we definitely don't end up in the same place, but I just like, I wanna make sure. I'm saying, like, before I was like gonna vote to say, okay, these are the priorities, this is the plan.
Yeah.
I would wanna make sure that we had presented it in detail to each school community and given people a chance to weigh in and us a chance to explain and all the rest of it.
Oh, and I just like, if we wanted board members to go to PTA meetings, for example, to present this information, I would be willing to do that, and hopefully, others would volunteer as well.
We're already going to board meetings.
Which would be great, just process wise, because I think we can take care of teacher and staff feedback through working with principals to do some type of thing. It would be great to be able to kind of collectively inform and listen to people.
And then I just want to be mindful of, like, the very top of this big spreadsheet is plan draft. And that's what this is. So it is kind of a working draft. And so we'll take your suggestions and comments, and we'll start working on our communication about what we want to do. As the final project costs for the San Antonio campus get sharper and we get the study from ADIS Architects, I think that will help us give us some more information for decision making going forward.
I think I remember when we were going through the facilities master plan, and I remember seeing that I wanted to prioritize the middle school conversion. Make sure that happens.
This
That's
board, the last board, because you guys were not
Right.
yet elected. The last board's priorities were middle school, San Antonio site, middle school conversion and modernization of.
We also had a meeting about that.
Okay,
We did, yeah.
We did.
all a blur.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Great.
Sixth grade model was one of our
Yeah.
Our priority.
top priority.
Any other
So what
tidbits to share?
So what direction did you want tonight? Sorry.
Well, I think we've gotten kind of some marching orders to be able to go back out. And maybe we'll work with those of you who might be interested in doing PTA meetings. I think we have this Friday, we have our PTA presidents meeting. So we can talk to PTA presidents
Yeah.
on Friday about maybe give them the first, like, here's where we are.
Yeah.
And start there.
We should give them enough time to advertise it to their parent community.
Well, I think making sure that all of the
It's what they
PTA
want.
leadership sees both of these things. will-
Yeah.
I mean, that'd be a good first sense of like what's necessary.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. Great.
Thank you. Did I take, I think I took public comment. You did. Okay.
I want to thank Marion for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Eric.
Yeah, and this is like our first pass at it, but we're gonna make Miriam present one. Let her field all the tough questions.
I don't know how, this is really helpful to see that.
Yeah, and these are all posted as part of the packet, so for the public to see as well.
Board policy updates.
Yes, so, tonight you have a series of policies. A is actually a new policy that we did not have, BPAR 5116. I'm just gonna go through these because I actually did some work in most of these policies over the last couple of weeks. So school attendance boundaries actually is a new policy for us. It really outlines like the basic enrollment and attendance and placement in schools practices that we use, but we didn't have a policy that was defining what that looks like for the community and for us as staff to follow. The intra-district open enrollment BP and AR has been updated to be more in line with a combination of things from ed code to our practices and to our current challenges, and to make it just more clear for people to understand. Science instruction came from, we pulled this at the last one, at Vladimir's suggestion, and I was just going to change a little bit about climate change. But then I read the whole recommended policy and it felt very high school oriented. So I actually reworked this one to really be K-8, TK-8 focused. Independent study, Kim Fletcher helped, Denise Khaled helped. Our independent study program has been changed probably every year since COVID, and it had intermingled short-term independent study and long-term independent study. It was unclear for secretaries who were working with families and teachers to try to implement this. So I actually just reorganized the policy. So everything in short-term is together and everything in long-term is together, but the content is generally the same, but you should look through that. And then board representatives, I did not do any specific work on this particular one. This is an item. All of these are for discussion, so please take time and look through. I'm hoping that our policies can become more user friendly as we move forward. Thank you for your input. So that will come back to you at our next meeting in November for approval, but any feedback you have in the meantime, please let me know.
Any comments or questions for Sandra? Any requests for public comment? No, okay.
Great comments on.
Oh, I just wanted to thank you for all the time that you put
Yeah.
into it.
I
There's
really-
so many
I
policies.
really got into it. I will tell you, I really got into it. So thank you.
Well, why don't we move on to board and administration comments? Carrie, do you want to take this off?
You know, very brief, given the time, we had a full on the development day on Friday. Kicked off by our own Sarah Gerlinger, who did a keynote titled Teaching for Our Community World, and it was just so very touching and inspiring. And then we had a number of principals and district office administrators and teachers help lead sessions that day. That we did PD updates, so you can get more of that then. I just want to thank Sarah and the team for their work organizing that day.
I heard Dr. Bosco presented and got a 5-star Yelp review. As everyone is aware of the government shutdown, the government shutdown is actually impacting Los Altos School District. Our auditors are unable to complete their audit because there's a thing called the Federal Compliance Supplement. is delayed. And because the federal funds, the way some of the funding comes in, the fiscal year of the federal government ends like September. Well, October is like, our budgets don't align with the federal government's, so that supplement delay is actually impacting, and our auditors cannot finish the audit. Neighboring school district had their audit was on the agenda, they had to pull it because the auditors couldn't certify the federal supplement. So interesting how the federal government shutdown is impacting us. We're okay now for the National School Lunch Program, because we have some money in Fund 13, or cafeteria fund. But that could also, we don't know yet, will that impact the National School Lunch Program for the federal reimbursements? So just always interested on what's going on in Washington. We don't receive a lot of federal funds, but the ones we do, and it does impact our audit. Our audit is done early and on time, and now it's delayed because the federal government, I was really annoyed. So, but if we get any update, yeah. But if we get an update on the federal government, hopefully we can get, get more information soon on that.
Oh, well, Shali, Sandra and I were at the farmer's market together last week and 5 of our school mascots showed up. Yeah. And so we had great engagement with kids, and we were promoting our new family info night, which just for the public is going to be on January 13th at 6:30 at Covington. So if you know any preschool age children who are eligible for TK, send them to new family info night. And I did attend the CS event at Santa Rita, and I also went on an Egan site visit with Santa. Jim?
Oh, okay.
I went to Loyola. Oak. Right. Yeah. Oak, PTA meeting,
Oh, thank you for doing that.
in order to make sure the things stay calm, and they work
Thank you.
without my help.
Right. The farmer's market was great. The only thing, our mascots were a huge hit. The only thing I would suggest is that they wear LASD shirts. Otherwise, they lob against the fence for mascots. But yeah, went to challenge team. I don't think you were in that challenge team as well. Pacific Clinics presented.
Yep.
And there was a student panel of high schoolers from Los Altos High School, so that was really good. I don't know. If I mentioned that I went to the Springer PTA meeting, I don't remember. Our board meetings get all mixed up, so I don't know if it's before or after. But then in terms of the future, I just wanted to say that we have a teacher celebration event coming, October 27th, and I hope that you all go. And October 29th, the School Board Association Annual Fall Dinner. So if you haven't bought your tickets, please let Marcy know, buy your tickets. And that's it. Awesome. Meeting adjourned.